This is Mike for Demented Pictures, and welcome to my new show. In this series, I'll be covering a range of top 10s that exclusively cover alternate cinema. To help with the launch of this new series, joining me today is none other than this guy.
What's up, gangsters? That's right, it's this guy from Horrible Reviews. I met Mike through his Demented Pictures channel, you know, where we are right now, and where he does some pretty great stuff. So when he asked me to co-host his video and talk a little bit about the topic he's about to reveal, well, I guess it's also in the title, but yeah, I was like, hell yeah, let's do it.
Today we'll be looking into the dark side of reality and counting down the greatest cannibal movies of all time. Only one entry per franchise. This is the top 10 cannibal movies. It's commonly accepted that the butcher of Plainfield, Ed Gein, a psychopath who accessorized parts of the human body, is considered the genesis of modern horror. In the wake of Ed Gein's trial, the world was exposed to a new kind of monster and inspired many writers and filmmakers. Following the colossal success of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, the real-world monster began a new wave of horror. It was during this time that the cannibals made their first entry into cinema.
And, well, when I personally think of cannibal movies, I usually think of the Italian outings made in the 70s and early 80s. I mean, I feel like that's where and when some of the most infamous entries in the subgenre were made. But don't worry guys, with this list we're going to expand way beyond just those Italian titles. So there might be a few, like, minor spoilers, but we try to not ruin anything for you guys. So you ready, Mike? Let's go!
Number 10. Cannibal Ferox was Umberto Lenzi's attempt to cash in on the popularity of cannibal movies in the early 80s with a surprisingly good execution. Often cited as being overly similar to another Italian cannibal movie and even reusing many of the same actors, Cannibal Ferox still manages to supply enough trash, gore, and nudity to entertain any schlock horror fan.
Exactly. And I personally, I also can't help myself but to always compare this one Cannibal Ferox to that one other Italian cannibal movie. You know, that might make it to this list. Actually, I really recently online I read a discussion where someone asked, you know, which one is better, Cannibal Ferox or, well, obviously the other one is Cannibal Holocaust. And it seemed that most people tend to agree that, you know, Cannibal Holocaust might be the better movie, but Ferox is more entertaining. And, well, I think that's actually a pretty good summary. Cannibal Ferox, definitely one of the more enjoyable out of the Italian cannibal movies.
Number 9. The Green Inferno. Taking its name from the retitled Cannibal Holocaust 2, Eli Roth's love letter to the genre is a movie of two halves. One, a social commentary on deforestation. The second, an all-out bloodbath of savage cannibalism. Delivering a faithful homage to the 80s cannibal genre, The Green Inferno surprised many fans with its practical effects and dark humor.
Although it does have its fair share of haters, I guess. And if you ask me, it probably has to do with the ridiculous anticipation and expectations that this movie built up during its 2 years that it couldn't find any distribution. In the end, now that we finally have the movie, it still has its flaws in my humble opinion. But I do indeed appreciate the dark humor. I mean, this movie is at no point pretending to be more than it actually is. I feel like at its core, it's mostly just having fun with the cannibal genre, most specifically the Italian ones we mentioned earlier. And you know, with that approach, you kind of know what to expect. It's pretty fun.
Number 8. Dumplings. Similar in essence to The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, Dumplings is an expanded story taken from the Three Extremes anthology movie, taking an even more taboo take on the genre by selling aborted fetuses in dumpling form as a means of youthful rejuvenation. Serving as an extreme satire on the desperation for beauty, Dumplings is a twisted and unforgettable watch.
And well, I'm afraid that in this case I'll have to be that one edgy kid that thinks it's a little overrated. I don't know, I feel like this one just suffers from what I like to call the human centipede syndrome, where the idea or the concept itself is the most interesting, or in this case, most gruesome aspect of the movie as a whole. Don't get me wrong though, I mean it's still well made. I definitely like the two leads and, you know, I appreciate the satire. It's just, I feel like the story alone isn't enough to carry a feature-length movie. In that sense, this movie might work better if it was just a short.
Number 7. Ravenous. Set in the mid-1800s and loosely based on the Donner Party incident, Ravenous follows Captain Boyd as his troop are preyed upon by a cannibal predator. Taking a folklore twist on the genre, the character-based movie features standout performances from Guy Pearce and Robert Carlyle, as two men locked in a deadly battle of psyche. Criminally overlooked, Ravenous is a true hidden gem.
And, well, I'll have to agree with that one, as I had not even heard of this movie before working on this video. But now I finally did, and I'm glad because it's pretty great. I like the relatively fresh approach to the cannibal genre. The two leads were indeed pretty outstanding, and the story kept me like guessing or surprising me throughout. I never really knew where I was going. And well, all of that with its very subtle dark comedy approach, to a degree that I'm not even sure it was intentional. This is indeed a relatively obscure cannibal movie that is, worth checking out.
Number 6. Alive. Though not a horror movie in the traditional sense, Alive is the incredible true story of the 72 Uruguayan rugby team whose plane crashed in the Andes Mountains. For 2 months with little food or water, the team were left with no option but to take extreme measures in order for their survival. A harrowing movie made all the more disturbing as it was overseen by an actual survivor.
Alive. And, well, I personally wouldn't categorize it as a cannibal movie. The fact that it appears on this list does indicate that perhaps. But, I like this variety. I mean, we can't all just have the Italian cannibal flicks on here. And this movie, it's great. Or perhaps more specifically, the story is great. In fact, it's almost unbelievable. It's truly fascinating, really. Well, because of that, for me personally, the story is the true show stealer in Alive. Especially since, some of the acting and some of the special effects, especially towards the beginning, they're not that great. Still, as a retelling of what happened, and from what I understand, the movie actually follows the true events rather closely. It's definitely worth checking out.
Number 5. Raw. Following vegetarian Justine in her freshman year at veterinary school, through an induction ritual she discovers she has carnivorous cravings. Becoming obsessed with the taste of flesh, she realizes her cravings are much more insidious. A stylish coming-of-age movie with a fresh take on the cannibal genre.
I love this one, Raw. For some weird reason, combining the cannibal movie and the coming-of-age movie just works like a charm here. I love the overall look. The movie looks great, the colors and the lighting, how it's shot. I really like the main girl. There's fantastic practical special effects, and even a good dose of some dark comedy. It's all of that together, it's a pretty great movie. I feel like the hype running up to its release and the marketing, it was probably all a little misleading, causing a lot of people to be disappointed with the movie. But hey, that's not the movie's fault. The movie is pretty great.
Number 4. Delicatessen. A dark comedy set in a post-apocalyptic future focuses on the tenants of an apartment building served by the titular delicatessen. With food becoming a form of currency, the delicatessen finds a way to feed the inhabitants.
Yes, co-directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who would go on to direct the widely acclaimed Amélie. His, hyper stylized and quirky style of filmmaking is already very prominently present here in this one. To a degree that one could argue that this movie is, style over substance, but even if that were the case, it's still pretty great. For starters, the movie looks amazing. It's a truly like a feast to the eye. The camera work is. But besides that, I still feel like the story is, somewhat original. It's fresh. And well, besides all of that, it really is just a lot of fun. This movie. That's right, boys and girls. Cannibalism. You heard it here first. It can be a lot of fun.
Number 3. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Though not exclusively seen as a cannibal movie, it is heavily implied. Again taking inspiration from Ed Gein, Tobe Hooper's seminal movie fully dived into the grisly side of reality and presented an experience never before seen in cinema. Ruthlessly brutal and unashamedly visceral, Texas Chainsaw is considered by many to be the beginning of modern horror.
Oh yeah, it probably should have been even higher up a not exclusively seen as a cannibal movies top list. I love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's really like one of my all-time favorite horror movies. It's just, it's just so raw and gritty to a degree that it basically convinced a whole generation of moviegoers that it is like this super graphic and violent, gory horror movie without ever really showing any on-screen blood. I mean, that's when you know you've made a successful horror movie.
Number 2. Cannibal Holocaust. Possibly the most notorious movie ever made, Cannibal Holocaust broke all rules by including real deaths and actual animal slaughter into the picture. Looking beyond the taboos lies an effective social satire that actually reverses the roles of what's considered good and bad. Considered the first major found footage movie, Cannibal Holocaust is recognized as the most iconic movie of the genre.
Cannibal Holocaust. Why is this not number 1 again? I love this movie, and I'm not even afraid to admit it. It might reflect poorly on me as a person, but I don't care. It's truly one of my favorite movies. It was just so groundbreaking, both in narrative, the way it told its story, but also, and definitely when it comes to just pushing the boundaries of on-screen violence. And then, well, me personally as the disturbing movies guy, and trust me, I hated the fact that I just referred to myself as that. But yeah, I personally, I consider it one of the few true contestants for the title of most disturbing movie ever made. Really, you just can't talk cannibal movies without mentioning Cannibal Holocaust. It's literally the godfather, like the Citizen Kane of cannibal movies.
Number 1. Silence of the Lambs. Not only the greatest cannibal movie of all time, but also one of the greatest movies of all time. Adapted from the Thomas Harris novel, The Silence of the Lambs sees Anthony Hopkins as the iconic Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter, as a consultant to find an equally disturbed psychopath. Again partially inspired by Ed Gein, the multi-Oscar winning movie redefined the horror genre and is considered a masterpiece of horror cinema alongside Nosferatu, Psycho, and Halloween. Featuring a powerhouse of actors, near-flawless storyline, and stunning direction and cinematography, The Silence of the Lambs is a phenomenal movie and worthy of the title, the greatest cannibal movie of all time.
Yes, Silence of the Lambs. Is it horror? Is it a thriller? Does that even matter? I mean, in the end, it's just a great movie. Featuring one of the most iconic movie villains ever, portrayed by Hopkins in the performance of a lifetime. Silence of the Lambs truly is just a superbly crafted thriller that, it's kind of just must-see material. Should go there? Well, alright. Yeah. I mean, I personally can always find a few flaws in it, but it ended up on the number 1 spot, so none of that for now. Back to you, Mike.
So there was our list. Were there any we missed? Which cannibal movies do you love the most? Leave a comment below, and a huge thank you to Horrible Reviews for featuring in this episode. Be sure to check out his channel in the link below.
Yes, it's just youtube.com/horrible reviews. I mostly talk about horror and exploitation, cult type of movies, and I mostly just try to have fun with it. I mean, I'm no expert, I just love movies, presumably like you guys do as well. So feel free to join me over there. And then, of course, a huge thank you back to you as well, Mike, for having me. I think we did a pretty good job here.
This is Mike for Demented Pictures. May your movies be bloody and your scares be shitless. Since the early days of cinema, it's been common practice to end a feature with an unexpected finale. This would commonly serve as a means to leave a movie open-ended and allow the continuation of a story. Over the years, there have been many remarkable twists that took audience members by surprise and delivered some of the greatest unforgettable movie climaxes of all time. Here we'll be looking at the very best examples to feature in alternate cinema. This is the Top 10 Twist Endings. For this list, I'll be looking at the movies that unwrapped the most interesting and unpredictable endings in horror history. Joining me this week, may I introduce from the Gorecast of the Emerald Gore Society, Mr. Johnny Deadly.
What's up, Deviants? Johnny Deadly here from the Gorecast, American Horror's #1 hit TV show, to talk to you about the top 10 twisted endings with my homeboy from Demented Pictures. I love a good twisted ending, me. You can't go wrong, because I think it's going one way, but then it goes another, and I like a shock at the end of a movie. There's this fine dance between viewer and director of being misguided and giving you a little bit of info, but is it the right info? Who knows? We're going to get into it. There's going to be some spoilers because, you know, endings of a twisted nature. Take it away, Mike.
Number 10. Scream. Wes Craven's genre-mocking slasher astounded audiences with its stylized cinematography, self-aware humor, and superb direction. Following Sydney as she's preyed upon by the ghost-faced killer, the whodunit-style mystery would reveal there were actually two killers, a revelation that nobody saw coming. A formula which has since been admired and repeated, Scream impressed the world with its unforeseeable twist.
Scream's an absolutely brilliant choice to have in at the list. I probably would have put it a little bit higher than 10, to be blatantly honest, because I remember when I saw this as a teenager, it caught me from start to finish. Like the fact that it finally gave a nod to the audience of their intelligence, that you're totally aware of these rules. And then on top of that, the beautiful way that they introduce you to one of the main characters and then have you thinking he's the killer from the start of the movie, and then completely have you thinking he's not the killer by the end of the movie, and then it turns out that it's him and his best mate are the killers. Genius.
Number 9. The Sixth Sense. M. Night Shyamalan's story of a young boy who has the ability to see ghosts. As he is being analyzed by a child psychologist, his visions become progressively more unsettling. Throughout the course of the movie, the psychologist, played by Bruce Willis, helps the boy control his sixth sense, only to find that he himself is also a spirit. The excellently crafted movie made an instant star of Shyamalan by delivering one of the cleverest and unexpected twist endings of all time.
The Sixth Sense, I have to say, when I saw that initially, blew my mind, and what a great job at misguiding your audience the whole way through a movie. M. Night Shyamalan, good job, you. Through the whole movie, you're followed with Bruce Willis going through it as a child psychiatrist that's trying to help out this young child who's able to see dead people, and that he's a ghost the whole time. And I think the way that they depicted this, where there was these cool little scenes as he's talking to the wife and there's just cold breath around her and stuff like that, were real subtle but really obvious, real good entry.
Number 8. Friday the 13th. When the movie was released in 1980, the world had become accustomed to the slasher movie formula. A mysterious unseen entity that kills camp counselors at the idyllic Crystal Lake campsite. Always hidden in darkness, the counselors believe the killer to be the vengeful spirit of Jason Voorhees, a disfigured child who died at the campsite. It's later revealed that the unassuming Mrs. Voorhees, Jason's mother, is channeling her son's persona and is revealed as the sole antagonist, a twist that truly shocked a 1980s audience.
Friday the 13th, and I gotta say, it's gotta be one of my favourite ones on the list, I just am an addict to anything Jason Voorhees. This was always a great twist of an ending because you have the child who gets murdered by neglect, for lack of a better term, and all of the camp counsellors believe that it's his vengeful spirit that's come back and whacking them off one by one. But it turns out it's dear old Pamela, his mum, isn't it? Yeah. Just gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Either way, absolutely great twist. No one ever suspects that one, the mother.
Number 7. Saw. The more you analyze the twist, the more dumb it becomes, but there's no denying the revelation of Jigsaw is one of the most unexpected and entertaining twists of the 2000s. A waking chained in a bathroom, two men discover a corpse between them. As the movie progresses and the situation intensifies, the unassuming corpse is used for several plot devices, using incredible misdirection to lead the viewer to believe the antagonist is a particular man. The twist comes when it's discovered that the man is in fact a proxy, and the real antagonist was what we believe to be the unassuming corpse.
Saw was always going to have to make it onto the list. If you think about the movie in general, you're just locked in a room for an hour and a half with these people, bar near the end of the movie where you get a little bit of the outside story, and it's just so brilliantly misguiding through the stuff that they're finding out in the room, all of the drama that's going on with the police detectives and stuff in the outside world, and then the fact that the dead guy that they were suspected to be dead the whole time just ups and walks out of the room and locks one of them in there. Harsh.
Number 6. Sleepaway Camp. For what is mostly a run-of-the-mill teen slasher, Sleepaway Camp hosts one of the greatest twists in horror. Following the shy Angela, a quiet girl who lost her brother at a young age, as she attends Sleepaway Camp. Being a victim of bullying and neglect, a mysterious body is secretly killing those who offend her. The climax of the movie went down in horror history as it was revealed that not only was Angela the killer, but she was actually her brother.
Wow, Sleepaway Camp. I always remember this movie as one of those everlasting twists at the end. I'd agree with you that other than that, it's a relatively run-of-the-mill slasher. There's a girl, Angela, and her cousin that are at a camp together. Angela's had a bit of a rough go. All of the girls at the camp are like at her. It has one of the biggest shocks at the end of the movie ever, because it just turns out that she's been her brother all along. I actually don't know how this made it further up the list, because I mean, as the ending of a horror movie goes, big massive dong. Any more shocking than that? Massive dong.
Number 5. Shudder. Hailing from Thailand, the simple story of a young photographer who hits a girl with his car. Fleeing the scene, he begins to notice ghostly images in his pictures. Seeing the girl he hit with his car, he recognizes her and attempts to make amends for his actions. Learning the girl has passed away, his haunting becomes more severe. By the end of the movie, it's discovered that the photographer was involved with the rape of a young girl, a rape that led her to commit suicide. To push the twist even further, the movie ends with an unforgettable final shot.
Shudder is one of those movies, I don't know if it's because I'm a photographer or what, but I love the storyline to this from start to finish. Just the being able to see apparitions in the photos and things like that's really cool, and the way it picks off this particular group of friends. Revealing this is kind of like a triple-edged sword, because you find out that the boyfriend was involved in a rape, then you find out that it's not the girl that they hit with the car that's haunting them, it was actually the girl that they raped. And then on top of that, you find out that she's haunting him completely, and then there's that final shot that Mike mentioned where she's just sitting on the guy's back like a ghostly backpack as he just rots away in a mental asylum. Great movie.
Number 4. Jacob's Ladder. When Jacob starts seeing demonic visions, he slowly begins to lose grip on reality. Being stalked by demons, he seeks the help of his former troupe. Learning he was experimented upon to be a mindless killer, he discovers it's the horror that he both witnessed and created that is beginning to return to him. The true revelation is incredibly harrowing, yet somewhat bittersweet, as we learn that Jacob's entire storyline was a metaphor of dealing with his own death before finally letting go.
Jacob's Ladder is an exceptional example of an amazing twist ending in a movie. I have to say, the misdirection they used, where you have the war scenes at the start of the movie with Tim Robbins and then you see him revealed kind of doing his everyday job after he gets back from the war, really lends to the entire storyline, how it never dawns on you how he's going through this death sequence, basically from transitioning from life to death. It literally keeps you misguided the whole way through it, and then all of the hallucinations and crazy demons and everything that he's seeing from the drugs that he's on were absolutely overpowering, and you just never even thought, or it dawned on you. It's an absolute great example of how to do a twist ending and how to have your audience eating out of the palm of your hand from start to finish.
Number 3. Old Boy. The incredible tale of Otis Sue, a man who was held captive for 15 years and is randomly set free, receiving a phone call telling him he has 5 days to discover why he was kidnapped. The movie becomes a quest for answers and vengeance. Brutal and unforgiving, Otis Sue meets a young girl on his journey and becomes sexually involved with. Continuing the mission to find his captor, he discovers the twisted reason why he was held captive, and furthermore, the true identity of his new love. Soul-destroying and harrowing, the revelation of Otis Sue's daughter left cinemagoers mesmerized with this unbelievably disturbing twist.
What? That's the reaction you're going to have when you're watching Old Boy and the reveal happens at the end that the protagonist basically ended up bumping uglies with his daughter. And it's an amazing use of storyline and fight sequences and everything to completely distract you from what the underlying hook is going to be by the end of the movie. And then when you realise that everything from him going to the restaurant to the start, right down to his daughter even showing him affection in the restaurant and bringing him home and all that, all comes down to one big elaborate game and a really wicked use of hypnotism.
Number 2. 7. This amazingly crafted dark noir thriller sees John Doe, a serial killer who uses sin as a motive, starring Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt as the detectives tasked with finding the murderer. Handing himself in to the police and with 2 victims left before he's complete, John Doe plays a twisted game to reveal the remaining sins, envy and wrath. This unforeseeable and unforgettable ending left audiences shocked and amazed at this masterfully crafted twist.
What worked about the ending for 7 was A, they had kept Spacey out of the picture until the very last scene in the police station where he shows up in the covered head to toe in the blood of his last victim, and then there's the epic drive to where he's showing them where the body is kept, where he really reveals the power of the character. Then on top of that, and you're just never expecting it to be one of the cops that's the last sin, and there's the infamous scene of what's in the box, where you have good versus evil on the screen. You have one of the main protagonists with a major choice that's going to absolutely change his life and change the way that people look at him and how he's respected and everything like that, and then on top of that his wife's head is in a box. Unbelievable storytelling.
Number 1. Psycho. The granddaddy of twist endings and arguably the source of unpredictable movies. Written by Robert Bloch and executed to screen by Alfred Hitchcock, Psycho hosts the original and most effective horror twist ending. The movie goes immediately into the realm of the unknown by killing the lead actor, a practice that had never been used in cinema. Murdered by the mysterious mother, no one suspected Norman, an awkward yet charming young man. Horror that was grounded in reality had rarely been seen. When it was revealed that Norma was actually playing Mother and her body had been left to rot was too much for a 1960 audience. The revelation of this ending was excessively enforced by Hitchcock as he purchased the majority of the books to prevent spoilers leaking to the audience. It was this dedication to the craft and the twist that granted Psycho the most shocking and brilliantly executed twist of all time.
Psycho is one of my all-time favourite horror films in general, let alone for the twisted ending on it, so I'm very, very happy to see this in the number one position. I'm also a massive Alfred Hitchcock fan, so I'm kind of slightly not surprised. The Freudian-laden masterpiece that is Psycho is one of Hitchcock's greatest works and will go down in time due to it. He had this amazing fascination with psychoanalysis and psychology and stuff like that, and I think this really shows in Psycho and how the reveal and the twist ending happens with it, like the way he uses Marion's mirror off of Norman and the way he kills the main character who you spend a good chunk of the opening of the movie with, off all as a way to just throw you off completely as to what's actually going on with Norman and his mother in his head, basically.
So there was our list. Were there any we missed? Which twist endings do you love the most? Leave a comment below, and a huge thank you to Johnny Deadly for appearing in this video. Be sure to check out his podcast in the links below.
Guys, thanks for joining me here with Mike, and I gotta say, it's been a hell of a lot of fun, and I think it went pretty well. If you want to check me or my compadre out a little bit more, we're on the American Horrors TV channel on Roku, where you're able to check out our show. And we also have a podcast every week on Facebook, and it goes on YouTube and Twitch as well. If you just type in the Gorecast into any of those search engines, I'm sure it will show up. So, yet again, Mike, thanks for having me on the show, and take it away.
If you enjoyed this video, please check one of the links on screen now for more. And as always, this is Mike from Demented Pictures. May your movies be bloody and your scares be shitless. A great sequel should expand upon the universe, evolve its story and characters, and steal nothing from its predecessor. With many great movies usually follows a subpar sequel. In the world of alternate cinema, many companies are more interested in creating fast cash grab sequels and willing to overlook the art of the craft in favor of ticket sales. Every so often, a movie comes along that not only delivers a great sequel, but in some cases, surpasses the original. Today I'll be looking at the very best examples to be found in alternate cinema. This is the Top 10 Horror Sequels. For this list, I'll be overlooking any straight-to-video releases as they are overly abundant. To qualify, the movie must have seen a theatrical run. So let's begin. Number 10. The beauty of Rec 2 is that the first act of the movie runs parallel with its predecessor, following a group of children who become enthralled with the local commotion. Sneaking into the building, they discover the horror that lies within. With their escape route blocked, the movie seamlessly transitions from the first installment and both continues and expands the story, making both movies appear like a single narrative. Delivering faithful scares and equal amounts of gore, Rec 2 also managed to execute an outstanding climax. Although the movie wasn't generally seen as an improvement, it was still well received by fans and critics alike. Number 9. 28 weeks later. Continuing Danny Boyle's tale of the outbreak of a rage virus in the United Kingdom, the follow-up to 28 Days Later follows the survivors of the epidemic as they attempt to rebuild British society. Finding a mother with an immunity to the virus, it's discovered she's also a carrier. What follows is an equally charged movie that faithfully expands the rage virus universe and delivers an intense, high-energy horror feature. Directed by the relatively unknown Juan Fresnadillo, 28 Weeks surprised everyone with its solid story, excellent cast, raw cinematography, and impressive direction. Number 8. Destroy All Monsters. Released in 1968, the ninth installment of the original Godzilla franchise was originally intended to be the final installment of the series. Initially set on Monsterland, an island that homes the kaiju monsters, until they are set free by an alien race. The battle begins as humanity attempts to sever the aliens' control. Featuring an almost complete roster of Toho's kaiju, the movie is an epic battle royale of humans, monsters, and aliens. The climax of the movie sees an all-out war as Gojira and the kaiju unite to take on the three-headed monster, Ghidra. Destroy All Monsters is a showcase of the absolute best of Toho's greatest monsters, and is arguably their best feature to date. Number 7. Halloween 2. Set immediately after the events of Halloween, we follow Laurie, Dr. Loomis, and Sheriff Brackett in an all-out manhunt for Michael Myers. After killing his sister in the intro to the original Halloween, it was Halloween 2 that revealed that Laurie was adopted and is in fact Myers' second sister. Again written by John Carpenter, the second movie ups the ante by including more blood and even more violent kills. Originally intended to conclude the story of Michael Myers, and despite its flaws, Halloween 2 is still seen as a worthy successor to the iconic original movie. Number 6. The Devil's Rejects. Rob Zombie's sequel to House of a Thousand Corpses sees the return of the Firefly family as they travel America to escape the law. Slaughtering and torturing innocent people, the tables are turned when we learn of Sheriff Waddell, an equally sadistic law enforcer. As Zombie was still a relative newcomer to directing, this engaging movie caught many viewers off guard by creating sympathy for the would-be heel characters as they try to survive the onslaught of the police. The Devil's Rejects was criticized for glorifying potentially real characters and challenged viewers to decide between favoring the psychopath family or the law. Number 5. A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. Following the financial success of Nightmare 2, New Line Cinema were eager to make another sequel. Directed by Chuck Russell, Dream Warriors saw the return of Nancy as a psychologist who aids a group of teens in a mental hospital. Returning the story to fit the original mythos, Nightmare 3 hosted some of the greatest practical effects of the 1980s, and also featured several of Freddy's most inventive kills, including the marionette murder and the primetime kill. Dream Warriors would fully explore the fun that could be had in horror, and was a seminal movie in the dark comedy subgenre. Considered by some to be superior to the original Nightmare, Part 3 has since grown a cult following. Number 4. Dawn of the Dead. George Romero's Night of the Living Dead is recognized as the genesis of all modern zombie movies. He shocked the world with his cynical commentary on society, an event he would repeat 10 years later with Dawn of the Dead. This time taking a stab at consumerism, Dawn follows survivors who've made their last stand inside a shopping mall. Upon being invaded by a rogue biker gang, all hell breaks loose in the mall, as the survivors must fight off biker thugs and a horde of the undead. Featuring groundbreaking effects by Tom Savini, Dawn of the Dead wowed audiences and set the bar for zombie movies. Impressing fans and critics alike, Dawn is often cited as the greatest zombie movie of all time. Number 3. The Bride of Frankenstein was one of the first ever sequels in Hollywood and is often cited as one of its best. Written by John Balderston and again directed by James Whale, Bride would reunite most of the original cast members and further explore the personality of the monster. In this second installment, we're introduced to the twisted Dr. Pretorius, who persuades the monster to convince Frankenstein to create a bride, a second monster to be his wife. The beautifully shot and harrowing tale astounded cinemagoers in 1935 and made many consider Bride to be a superior movie. Since its release, it is now recognized as a masterpiece of cinema. Number 2. Evil Dead 2: Dead by Dawn. Sam Raimi's follow-up to the independent smash follows Ash for his second night in the cabin. Beginning with a quick recap of the first movie, Ash awakens and tries to escape the woods. With no way to escape, he's forced to spend another night. Starring Bruce Campbell and joined by a new supporting cast, the movie made full use of its Hollywood budget, showcasing the very best in practical makeup effects. Evil Dead 2 would also reinvent lead character Ash Williams into the wisecracking anti-hero the world became to adore. Followed by the equally entertaining Army of Darkness, Dead by Dawn became the fan favorite as it hosted the perfect mix of comedy and horror, a combination that many have tried to replicate but never perfected it as it did in Evil Dead 2. Number 1. Aliens. Taking the reins from Ridley Scott, James Cameron's expansion of the Alien universe was met with universal praise. Changing the atmosphere from hollow suspense to an all-out action movie, Aliens also introduced the xenomorph hierarchy and the now iconic Alien Queen. Continuing the story of Ellen Ripley, who awakens after 57 years in stasis to serve as an advisor for a team of colonial marines. Upon their arrival at Moonbase LV-426, they find the base has been overrun by the xenomorph species. The sequel is also much more of an ensemble piece, casting Michael Biehn, Lance Henriksen, Jeanette Goldstein, and the late great Bill Paxton. Every character is incredibly well written, which makes for a much more engaging watch. Whereas the original followed what you don't see as scarier method, Aliens was a full-on visual treat. Teaming H.R. Geiger with an amazing effects team, we get to see a plethora of the xenomorph species. At its core, Aliens has a very simple plot, but was executed with such finesse and craftsmanship that made it a truly amazing movie, which many argue surpasses the original. So there was my list. Were there any I missed? Which horror sequels do you love the most? Leave a message below, and as always, this is Mike from Demented Pictures. May your movies be bloody and your scares be shitless. For many years, women in movies were only ever seen as the damsel in distress, the romantic interest, or the aim of a hero's efforts. This was also true in many early horror movies, from Ann Darrow to Marion Crane. It wasn't until the late Silver Age of horror that women were being seen in a different light, not as the feeble damsel, but as intimidating heel characters. As society and cinema has progressed, we've seen some phenomenal female antagonists. This is the Top 10 Female Villains. Joining me this week, may I introduce from Bloodbath and Beyond, Mr. J. Bond.
Hey, what's up? I'm Jay from Bloodbath and Beyond. If you're unfamiliar with our channel, we cover a lot of horror movies, we do reviews and stuff, and mainly of slashers. And now when the common horror fan thinks of slashers, the first names that are gonna pop into your head are Freddy, Michael Myers, Jason, Leatherface, even Pinhead, Chucky, all male antagonists. And there are so many cool things about female villains that I think are just worth talking about. Female villains are unique because generally to make up for maybe their stature being smaller, they're playing mind games or they're just insane. And there's always a different element that's just not, you know, like a big burly person hacking and slashing away. There's something way deeper and more mentally deranged with these characters, and that's why I absolutely love them. So to qualify this list, the character must of course be female and be played by a female as well. So we're going to exclude people like Angela Baker from Sleepaway Camp, as well as the Alien Queen, for obvious reasons. So let's begin.
Number 10. From the French extreme movement of the 2000s comes La Femme. Played by Beatrice Dalle, La Femme terrorizes a heavily pregnant woman in an attempt to cut out her unborn child. The fully realized femme fatale explores the extreme measures of a mother of a murdered child. Her savage intensity and ruthless aggression made for an unsettling and mesmerizing watch. Bringing an unstoppable energy and determination, La Femme is a tour de force of a psychotic thirst for blood.
Like you mentioned, the determination of La Femme is exactly why she's so terrifying, because she's gonna do anything she can possibly do to exact revenge and also claim what she rightfully believes is hers. She's relentless, she's ruthless, and she's just way over the top with her obsession with getting this baby. She wants that baby. And on this mission, it's so well portrayed because you see it in her actions. The bathroom scene, for example, she's banging on that door. She doesn't stop. And then she's also super conniving and sneaky. And even if she gets hurt, she gets back up again. And this is what makes La Femme just a complete psychopath.
Number 9. Lola Stone. From one of the greatest indie movies of the 2000s, we are introduced to the adorably warped Lola Stone. Played by Robin McLeavy, The Loved Ones follows the story of Princess, a spoiled brat of a teenager with an unyielding sadistic personality. When Lola's prom date request is denied, encouraged and supported by her equally deranged father, she goes to the extreme to make sure her magical night goes her own way. McLeavy's outstanding portrayal of Lola turned the movie into a sleeper hit and over time has grown mass popularity, mostly due to Princess's psychotic determination and mesmerizing character.
The Loved Ones is one of those indie gems that is finally being seen by a lot because us horror fans continue to talk about it. It's a great little movie, and that's not only because of the story, but the acting and the characters involved. Mainly Lola, our princess, our brat. She's all types of crazy, and she's basically the embodiment of those that are afraid to date online or go on blind dates because this is the person you're hoping that you never run into. She can be calm and reserved at times, soaking in the moment, and then she can flip and just be a total brat, throw a tantrum, and get a little sadistic while she's doing so. So she's absolutely nuts, and she's very deserving of being on this list.
Number 8. Julie Walker. The movie follows Kurt and Julie after breaking into a government compound and witnessing the effect of trioxin 2,4,5. Julie's killed in a tragic motorcycle accident. Left with no option, Kurt reanimates her corpse. Upon Julie's return, she finds she has developed a taste for flesh. Keeping her cravings at bay through self-mutilation, she unwittingly becomes the mother of a swarm of the undead. Played by Melinda Clarke, CoverGirl Julie has the arguably bizarre title of Sexiest Ever Zombie, and also became a minor horror culture icon.
I definitely have to agree with Julie Walker being like the sexiest zombie ever. At first I thought it was gonna be that like one police girl from Scout's Guide, but that's probably because I completely forgot about this movie until like the new Vestron release. But you take her sexiness and you mix that with her punk rock look and her appetite for flesh, and you have easily one of the best, most badass female villains of all time. I'm surprised she's not actually higher on this list because I think she brings a lot to the table that's so unique that everybody is going to love.
Number 7. Julia Cotton first appeared in Clive Barker's '87 classic Hellraiser. Serving as temptress for the vile Frank, a man who managed to escape hell, she lures unwitting victims to feed her former lover. Fully realized in Hellraiser 2, Julia is released from hell by the twisted Dr. Channard. Finding herself skinless, she once again uses seduction to persuade him into feeding her bloodlust. Played by Claire Higgins, Julia would also create the Channard Cenobite, a Leviathan hybrid with the power to destroy Pinhead, and became one of the most recognized villains in the series.
Julia is a unique entry on this list because what makes her evil is her human nature and her just being like an asshole. A lot of people point fingers at Pinhead as if he's the main villain of the Hellraiser series. But in the first two entries, it's actually Julia. She's just like a bad person in general, and she continuously gets worse and worse turning Channard into a Cenobite himself. And I don't think she's generally viewed as a villain, but if you take a step back and look at everything that she's done, she's a terrible person.
Number 6. Asami Yamazaki. From legendary director Takashi Miike comes the story of Shigeharu Ayama, a widower past his prime who is encouraged to find a new wife. Enlisting the help of a casting director, he meets Asami, a beautiful and mysterious candidate. Becoming enamored with Asami, we learn she is not the fragile girl we first assume, but a demented psychopath driven by the fear of rejection. Throughout the movie, Asami's twisted obsessions are spoon-fed to the audience before fully unleashing in an unforgettably disturbing climax.
What makes Asami a great villain is the fact that she's small, she's cute, she's innocent, and she's someone you would never ever see coming. And the fact that you have these men that it seemed to be in a power position when all along she's actually judging the people in front of her. It's absolutely brilliant, even down to the finale, which is obviously the reason why this movie is praised so much. Asami is still cute, well, not so innocent. She is having a great time doing what she's doing. That's the kind of crazy that makes her one of like the scariest people on this list, because she could be anyone. Like, I would be totally caught off guard if I just like met this girl, she brought me home, and then here we are. Now I'm drugged and getting my ankle sawed off. Great.
Number 5. Margaret White. Mother of Stephen King's Carrie, an overly sheltered teen with the power of telekinesis, Margaret is the ultimate God-fearing psychopath. Using her misunderstood beliefs to raise her daughter, she abuses and psychologically manipulates her into a social outcast. In turn, it's a pariah status that makes her a victim of school bullying. Following a twisted prom night prank, Carrie's frustrations reach fever pitch and triggers her iconic rampage, her final confrontation being with none other than her own mother, the source of all her anguish.
There's not a ton that I can say about Margaret White except that she is just a really evil person. She's completely draining the life out of Carrie. I'm surprised she didn't snap earlier, if I'm being honest. What's even more frightening about this character, this mother figure, is the fact that this happens all the time. There is abuse in households that will drive people to their tipping point. So Carrie is basically just a pot that's boiled over and she's had it, and she happens to have superpowers, so that's what makes the movie interesting. But it's just terrifying. This woman makes me so agitated and frustrated to even talk about, and this is what makes her a true villain. She might even belong higher on this list, to be honest, because of how much distaste I have for her. Ugh, I can't. Let's move on.
Number 4. Sadako and Kayako. This 2-for-1 entry is due to the characters' similarities. Hailing from Ringo and Joanne respectively, the two antagonists terrified the Western world during the Asian horror remake movement of the 2000s. Both originating from the Kwaidan genre, they are presented in a similar ghostly fashion. And although their intentions are different, the execution of both antagonists struck the same memorable scares. As interchangeable as the two are, they finally went head-to-head in 2016 with a crossover movie, Sadako vs. Kayako.
Simply put, these two scare the hell out of me. I did first see them back in the day. I went to the Ring, and it is one of the first movies to ever traumatize me to an extent. Specifically, the twisted face in the closet. The Grudge scared the shit out of me as well. Demon faces and bodies contorting are just not my thing, and these are the movies that started that. There's also something unnerving about Sadako or Samara like coming through the TV, because if somebody can come out of that TV, then surely a demon can come out of my TV. That's terrifying. And that's the reason why I actually still haven't seen Sadako versus Kayako, if that's how you say their names. I always get it all screwed up. I've seen some clips, I've seen trailers, and those all freak me out. I mean, it kind of seems a little more upbeat, but no thank you. I will avoid those at all costs. Great choices for villains for sure.
Number 3. The second entry from Stephen King sees Kathy Bates playing the psychotically imbalanced Annie Wilkes in this twisted story of an overly obsessed hyperfan. After author Paul Sheldon is injured in a car accident, he awakens to be nursed by Annie, who claims to be his #1 fan. Reading his upcoming novel, she learns that Misery Chastain, one of her favorite characters, is to die. Unable to accept the demise of the fictional heroine, she leads a tour de force of torture upon Sheldon as she forces him to rewrite the upcoming novel. Demented, lovable, and all-out terrifying, Annie Wilkes remains one of King's most memorable characters.
Now, Annie here is definitely a YouTuber's worst nightmare. As a longtime Stephen King fan, I think Annie Wilkes is probably one of my favorite characters that he's ever created because of the way that she showcases this obsessive personality of hers. Kathy Bates had a perfect performance. There's just such a demented thought process here. This makes sense to Annie, and that's what's scary. It's translated into the real life, and it's affecting people around her, most notably Paul. We see different sides to Annie here, where she can go from caring and compassionate to just over the top, super powerful, and just ruthless. And the top tier acting just makes this basically a true visualization of madness.
Number 2. Regan MacNeil. Regardless of gender, Regan is recognized as one of the most iconic horror villains of all time. Played by the then 12-year-old Linda Blair, following the discovery of an ancient artifact, Regan begins to show increasingly disturbing characteristics. It's discovered she is possessed by the demon Pazuzu. Enlisting the help of Fathers Karras and Merrin, the two priests take battle with the demon to fight for Regan's return. Unaccustomed to such intense horror in 1973, and coupled with the stunning cinematography and possible reality angle, the exorcist Regan MacNeil is one of the all-time greats.
Regan is definitely one of the most memorable horror icons of all time, and mainly because she was a kid, and kids are creepy, and especially if you're a kid possessed by a demon, you're gonna be even way creepier. And she has so many quote-worthy lines that are less like a kid, more like a demon, as well as her insane reality-twisting actions that make her just supernatural and unlike anything that had ever really been seen before. From Linda Blair's acting to the lines and the weird and odd situations, I think that this is the best portrayal of a demon possession in any film to date.
Number 1. Pamela Voorhees. The mother of the iconic Jason Voorhees, a disfigured child who was drowned at the hands of Camp Crystal Lake's counselors. Unable to accept the death of her son, she lost grip on reality and began hearing his voice, telling her to kill those responsible for his murder. Played by the late great Betsy Palmer, Pamela Voorhees is the most lovable and relatable horror villain. Her ability to switch between sanity and insanity made for a highly volatile and unforgettable villain. Despite her death in the original Friday, Pamela would make several returns to the franchise, most memorably as a disembodied head, which would feature prominently in both of the major Friday the 13th video games. Often forgotten as the original killer, until 1980, a female antagonist of her caliber had never been seen before. Pamela Voorhees set the bar for female horror villains and remains one of the greatest and most brutal of all time.
Pamela Voorhees paved the way for one of the most beloved horror franchises of all time. She was insane and vicious when she took things into her own hand, and the way that she handled grief, and she played an absolutely instrumental role to Jason's motivations throughout the rest of the Friday series that was both his crutch and his weakness. Betsy Palmer did a great job, and Miss Voorhees herself as a character, I think, just shocked a lot of people, and it showed what can be done in the slasher genre and basically kickstarted the new 80s trend of slasher movies. and so she's very, very deserving of being the top spot.
So there was my list. Were there any I missed? Which female horror villain do you love the most? Leave a message below, and a huge thank you to Jay for featuring in this episode. Be sure to check out his channel in the links below.
Thanks, Mike, for having me on. It's been nice to talk about things. Usually I just do reviews, but to actually be able to talk about specific characters in depth and just kind of go over some of my favorites was a blast. I mean, technically I would have swapped out a few people here and there, maybe jacked the order, but it's your list, I get it. But I would totally have, Amanda Young and Tiffany Ray would be high up there, I think. I absolutely love Tiffany. Anyway, my name's Jay. If you're unfamiliar with my channel, it's Bloodbath and Beyond. We do horror movie reviews. Check it out. Links are in the description. And thank you again, Mike. I appreciate it. Take it easy.
This is Mike from Demented Pictures. May your movies be bloody and your scares be shitless. The fear of the machine stems back to the Industrial Revolution, a time when engineering and technology was beginning to replace the humble worker. It was this fear that would inspire many of the early sci-fi screenwriters and created some of the most iconic characters in cinema. Over time, the automaton has mostly been presented in a lighthearted fashion. But not today. Today I'll be looking at the very best cinematic examples of heel mechanisms. This is the Top 10 Killer Machines. For this list, I'll be looking at the very best antagonistic automatons in alternate cinema. Joining me this week, may I introduce Mr. Mitch Patterson.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. Like he said, I'm Mitch Patterson from the channel Screaming Shark, where I have a couple of shows like Pros Before Cons and Tastes and Terror. Killer machines, robots, cyborgs, and what have you all work perfectly within the horror genre solely because they have so much over us. They can be unstoppable, so hard to destroy, all because of the fact that we made them that way. There are only going to be two things that we are going to be considering when ranking these murderous machines, and it's right there in the name. They have to be any kind of bot or machine that takes part in killing. It's that simple. Sorry, Johnny 5. Despite getting a badass look at the end of Short Circuit 2, you didn't make the cut. With that out of the way, let's begin, Mike.
Number 10. Based on the Philip K. Dick short story Second Variety, starring Peter Weller, Screamers follows Colonel Hendrickson as he travels an alien wasteland. Under the planet's surface lies a military weapon, the autonomous robot swords, or Screamers. In a state of war, the Screamers were designed to kill any and all enemies. Over time, the weapons evolved and became efficient human predators. Perhaps one of the best-known hidden gem movies in the 90s, this low-budget character feature proved that money does not make the movie.
How did I go for so long without hearing about this movie? One of the best 90s B movies I have seen so far, from its likable cast to decent enough special effects. The best part of the movie by far are the Screamers, which start out as these phantasm balls that travel under the ground much like graboids and can cut people to shreds with their super sharp saw blades. It gets pretty graphic, but nothing wrong with that at all. Somehow they upgrade into animal-like robots and even small children. Talk about creepy. This does result in some good twists and turns throughout the movie that I just didn't see coming. Gets to the point where we as the audience and the characters don't trust anybody. Who's who? Are you man or machine? It's much in line with The Thing, and I like it.
Number 9. Earth is dying and a team is sent to Mars to scout locations for a new home. Aided by the reconnaissance droid Amy, the team search for a suitable location for colonization. Accidentally switched to military mode, with its advanced weaponry and agility, Amy recognizes the team as hostile and attempts to dispatch them. Alone on an alien planet with little hope for escape, the crew must survive the onslaught of Amy, or face returning home to a doomed Earth.
At first I thought Amy was going to be a lot like HAL 9000 with her compact shape and camera lens eye. That's until she's activated and she unfolds into a dog-like stance. That's when I thought to myself, ooh, I can't wait to see her in action. Despite only killing one person in the movie, she still can be very intimidating. Amy is able to utilize stealth and drones to sneak up on and surprise her enemies. She can also be a total jerk because through the use of X-rays, she can target specific points in the body to attack, like a single rib. Amy is one dangerous tactical piece of equipment that I would hate to be stuck on Mars with.
Number 8. When all of Earth's machinery is awakened by a passing comet, a group of survivors barricade themselves at the Dixie Boy gas station. In the plethora of homicidal appliances and machines that the movie hosts, none is more iconic than the Happy Toys Green Goblin truck. Approved by Marvel, the 18-wheeler would serve as figurehead for the sentient vehicles. Always leading any attack, the Goblin became the face of the enemy. Written and directed by Stephen King, the wonderfully campy Maximum Overdrive became a highly regarded guilty pleasure movie for its sense of humor, unapologetic kills, and excellent AC/DC soundtrack.
Oh, Maximum Overdrive. So stupid, but yet so hardcore at the same time. That truck bearing the Green Goblin's face is without a doubt the poster child for this movie. It's so ridiculous looking, but imagine that thing heading right for you at the dead of night and tell me that's not scary. He shouldn't get all the credit though. There's also a killer vending machine, arcade cabinet, and a machine gun turret that randomly wheels by and really knocks up the body count. But none can forget that the best kill in this movie has to go to the steamroller that demolishes that innocent boy. By far not my favorite Stephen King movie, but I cannot deny its inclusion on this list.
Number 7. In a post-apocalyptic future where spare parts have become a commodity, a rare robotic head is discovered. Reactivated, the head uses scrap metal and junk to build itself a new body. Unbeknown to the owner Jill, Mark 13 was a defective military weapon. Designed to kill and with the ability to self-repair, the machine goes on a murderous rampage. Mostly set in a single apartment, the low-budget sci-fi slasher showcases some incredible practical effects for 1990. Hardware is a criminally overlooked New Age B-movie.
You said it right there, Mike. This movie should be a classic that everybody remembers, much like Terminator. It's a gorgeous looking and sounding film that doesn't get the recognition that it deserves. Mark 13 is one of those killer robots that is scary. Not only because it can rebuild itself from the ground up, but also the way that the practical effects were achieved and filmed. The animatronics are amazing when considering the time and budget. It's ultimately the cinematography and lighting that really adds to the visual horror of Mark 13. Also, can't forget to mention its brutality when it comes to the kills. Yikes. I would hate to find that thing in my shower.
Number 6. In Stephen King's second entry comes Christine, a tale of a sentient 58 Plymouth Fury with a thirst for blood. Purchased by Arnie Cunningham, he restores the car to her former glory and undergoes a psychological transformation. Becoming progressively more arrogant, Christine takes a life of her own that reflects Arnold's new personality. Serving as an extension of his psyche, the seemingly indestructible Christine develops her own homicidal character. Directed by John Carpenter, Christine remains one of King's most favorite adaptations.
The red 58 Plymouth has become such an icon of horror that whenever I see any 50s looking red car, I instantly think it's possessed. The relationship between Arnie and Christine becomes so intimate and so convincing that at first you start to think maybe it's just Arnie behind the wheel killing off anybody who comes between the two. But come on, we all know she's alive, and the many different ways that they achieve this visual is outstanding. The crown jewel of the movie would either have to be when Christine repairs herself, done through reversing the film, or when she forces herself into a tight space just to kill Moochie. This could have been so silly, but with Carpenter behind the wheel of this movie, Christine is scary, but yet so intriguing at the same time.
Number 5. The reason for Hal's low placement is only due to his lack of automation. Seen as more of a program and less of a machine, Hal's sentience made for some truly terrifying concepts. Voiced by Douglas Rain, Hal's intimidation comes from its infallible intelligence and ability to learn. Searching for an ancient monolith that will grant a leap in evolution, the movie becomes a tense battle of psyche against man and machine. Written by Arthur C. Clarke and directed by Stanley Kubrick, 2001 received major academic recognition and is considered a masterpiece of cinema.
The scary thing about HAL 9000 is that he's almost a real thing with Alexis and Google Home. He was designed to appear more human, which opens the door to lies and manipulation, which allows HAL to play around with the main characters and makes it so hard to judge him with that classy, monotone voice, which contrasts so well to his actions. It's even harder for them to challenge HAL since he's everywhere on that ship, basically controlling it. My only gripe with HAL is that he doesn't really put up a good fight against Dave at the end. Like, come on, with the whole ship at disposal, there's no excuse. But at least he got one good kill under his belt. That and everything else is enough to place him on this list.
Number 4. Featuring some of the most creative and imaginative creature designs ever put to screen, Virus was sadly let down by its poor writing and characters. Discovering an abandoned science vessel, the team of the Sea Star see an opportunity to claim the ship under maritime law. When exploring the vessel, they find themselves under attack from sentient machines, some combining the former crew. Finding their tugboat destroyed, the crew fight to stay alive as the sentients try to absorb them into their own collective. Despite its poor reviews, Virus has some of the most amazing practical effects of the 1990s.
The overall movie is decent, nothing amazing, but it makes up for it with its animatronic killing machines. This thing builds itself in an army of highly detailed and articulated robots to wipe out Earth's virus. Us. The little spider robots are cool, but when you see the first full-size robot made from spare parts and human flesh is disturbing. The final boss is fantastic looking, achieved through some really impressive puppetry and very subtle CGI. It's very similar to hardware. Robots made from a bunch of hydraulics and wires killing people. Don't let that take away from the amazing effects and the brutality that these killing machines have to offer.
Number 3. This underappreciated sequel sees RoboCop taking on the drug lord Kane, leader of his own nuke cult, an addict of his own product. Played by Tom Noonan, upon Kane's death, his neural organs remain intact and is seen as the perfect candidate for a new cyborg project, a candidate they believe can be manipulated and controlled by the nuke drug. Kane's new body is an armored battle tank, equipped with an arsenal of killing tools that he uses to devastating effect. Breaking his programming, Kane goes on a rampage that is seemingly unstoppable. Bringing Kane to the screen required a hybrid of effects to create. Everything from stop motion to early CGI made Kane the highlight of the movie.
Myself, I'm not too fond of RoboCop 2, but I love Kane just as much as Ed 209 and RoboCop himself. This machine with the brain of a criminal is the best part of the movie by far, all done through the amazing stop-motion animation provided by Phil Tippett. The design is just so unique, from the tiny little legs up that massive weaponized body all the way to that hammer head. The highlights of this movie all include Kane, starting off when he guns down some of Detroit's baddies and political figures, and of course his final fight with RoboCop, which goes on for a pretty long time, but I'm not complaining. I think he's a perfect choice for the number 3 killing machine.
Number 2. Possibly the most iconic of the 50s B-movie antagonists, Gord is the servant of Klaatu, an alien ambassador who arrives to Earth to force peace into mankind. Played by the 7'7" tall Locke Martin, the incredibly imposing Gort was designed to eradicate any aggressor. Armed with a death ray built into the visor, the droid is referred to as Interstellar Police Force to preserve the peace. Despite the intentions of his mission, Gort's intimidating presence was enough to make the Earth stand still. Serving as an interesting commentary on society, The Day the Earth Stood Still is a well-earned classic.
Gore is one of the most iconic robots, not just from the classic sci-fi era, but all of cinema together. I don't know if I entirely agree with having him here among this list of murderous machines. Gore only kills 2 people in the movie, and they're both at the same time. When threatened, his visor will slowly rise up, and he can make anything disappear, including people. But you see, it's all for keeping the peace, because back on its planet, Gore, along with many others, were built to be policemen. I still can't deny his importance in the genre of sci-fi, and since he did technically kill 2 people, that would make him a killer machine.
Number 1. It's often forgotten that the Terminator began life as a sci-fi slasher. What evolved into a sci-fi juggernaut was originally compared to Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers. Traveling from the future to terminate the mother of the leader of the Resistance, the original T-800 was the ultimate killing machine. Although the T-1000 was the more efficient Terminator, it was the original T-800 that created the greatest fear. Played by the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, the original Terminator brought a new dimension to horror, with outstanding action, incredible storyline, and revolutionary effects. Created by the legendary Stan Winston, the T-800 stands tall as the greatest killing machine of all time.
The T-800 is maybe the only movie robot that legit scared me. An unstoppable, intelligent piece of hardware specifically designed to kill a target and stop it at nothing to do so. That's scary. The visual of the T-800 is scary. After when all the skin and tissue is burned away, it rises back up only as its endoskeleton, which was done through Stan Winston's puppetry and Doug Beswick's stop motion. People say that the stop motion looks bad and too jerky, but I would argue that it only adds to the creepiness of the Terminator at the end of the movie. Can't go on without mentioning Arnold's performance. His acting was so machine-like and so effective that it makes me believe that endoskeleton that we see at the end of the movie was truly underneath Arnold's skin the whole time. The T-800 and the movie itself were so effective that I made up plans for just in case if a Terminator came back in time to kill me. That's how much the movie freaked me out the first time I watched it.
So there was my list. Were there any I missed? Which killer machines do you love the most? Leave a comment below, and a huge thank you to Screaming Shark for featuring in this episode. Be sure to check out his channel in the link below.
It's sad to see my boys, the Killbots from Chop 'Em All, not make the list. Honorable mentions does not do them justice. But forget about that, this is a pretty great list, Mike. It was a pleasure to be able to come on the show, talk about cinema's greatest killer machines, and actually watching some of these movies for the first time, like Screamers and Virus. I actually really liked those movies. Be sure to check out my channel, Screaming Shark, where I take a look at movies, especially horror, like in Pros Before Cons, the show where I take a bad movie and try to say good things about it. Thanks for having me, Mike. It was a blast, and hopefully our species is never wiped out by technology.
This is Mike from Demented Pictures. May your movies be bloody and your scares be shitless. Throughout cinematic history, many companies have found success through reinvention, taking previous features and adapting them to suit a relative generation. This trend was never more present than it is in alternate cinema. With popular licenses yielding highly profitable theatrical runs, the horror remake has become commonplace. With many companies mostly interested in theatrical revenue, respect for the source material is often overlooked in favor of appealing trailers. But once in a while, visionary directors who truly understand the material deliver faithful updates and sometimes can improve upon the original. This is the Top 10 Horror Remakes. For this list, I'll be looking at the very best horror movie remakes, reboots, and reimaginings. If the picture has previously existed as a licensed feature, it's eligible for this list. So let's begin. Number 10. In 1977, Wes Craven was still a relative unknown. His second feature, The Hills Have Eyes, the story of a stranded family who become prey to a tribe of deformed savages, established Craven as a visionary horror director. Released in 2006, the updated version would hit many of the same beats and showcased impressive makeup and gore effects. Directed by Alexandre Aja, the respectful remake impressed both fans of the original and the new horror generation and showed a full understanding of the genre. Although the remake was considered pointless by many, it became one of the most successful horror movies of the 2000s. Number 9. Ringu is often cited as the movie that introduced Japanese horror to a mass audience. When it was recreated in 2002 to suit a Western demographic, the movie was hailed as one of the most terrifying of the decade. Starring Naomi Watts as journalist Rachel, who investigates a mysterious videotape set to kill its viewers. Upon viewing the tape, she becomes haunted by a malevolent spirit who threatens to take her life in 7 days. The movie becomes a race against time as Rachel must solve the mystery of the videotape and ultimately save her own life. Although overshadowed by its inspiration, The Ring is a faithful adaptation that delivers great atmosphere and great scares. Number 8. Much like The Ring, The Grudge managed to capture Japanese quiet-on cinema exceptionally well. What gives The Grudge the edge was its respect to Japanese culture. The remake follows Karen, an American nurse living in Tokyo who is exposed to a supernatural curse. Surrounded by death, Karen is tormented by vengeful incarnations whose attacks become progressively more unsettling. Discovering her curse is a spiritual virus caught from the home of a previous victim, she strives to find a way to cure the curse. Delivering a much more faithful retelling, The Grudge received less Western popularity than The Ring, but delivered a much more polished and respectful experience in quiet-on cinema. Number 7. Produced by Rob Tappert, Sam Raimi, and Bruce Campbell, Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead defied modern filmmaking, insisting on mostly practical and makeup effects, a decision that was well received by many fans. Although lacking the humor of the original, Evil Dead 2013 adds more character development and a much more engrossing narrative. Peppered with respectful homages to the original, the remake had room for improvement, but delivered enough over-the-top gore and was considered a respectful adaptation with a promising potential as a new franchise. With the sad cancellation of the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV series, many fans are highly anticipating a sequel to this worthy reboot, and even more so, a crossover of the two franchises. Number 6. At first glance, many fans of the 1991 It miniseries were skeptical about a cinematic adaptation. All but a few were surprised to find that Andy Muschietti's take on the Stephen King favorite was an exceptionally well-made adaptation. Following the shoes of the legendary Tim Curry, Bill Skarsgård's portrayal of Pennywise was met with universal praise. Bringing a demented instability to the character, the newcomer earned the respect of many a horror fan. Although criticized for its subpar scares and overuse of CGI, it managed to capture a sense of magic and wonder not often seen in horror. Coupled with an outstanding young cast, it became the most successful horror movie of 2017. Number 5. From one of the most iconic B-movies of the 1950s comes Philip Kaufman's 1978 remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The retelling of a small town's inhabitants who are slowly being replaced with identical but emotionally devoid doppelgangers. Featuring Donald Sutherland, Jeff Goldblum, and Leonard Nimoy, the movie successfully recreated the panic and paranoia featured in the original picture and managed to execute some truly disturbing moments. Breathing new life into the outdated alien invasion flick, the 78 adaptation of Body Snatchers is considered by some to be the superior movie for its subtle approach, serious tone, and outstanding characters. Number 4. For what is considered by many to be the greatest zombie movie of all time comes Dawn of the Dead 2004, a straight retelling of a group of survivors who barricade themselves in a shopping mall during a zombie apocalypse. Seen by many as a satire on consumerism, Zack Snyder's remake managed to faithfully replicate and update the George Romero classic by enforcing the social satire as seen in the original Night of the Living Dead. Starring Ving Rhames, Sarah Polley, and Jake Weber, Dawn of the Dead 04 also featured excellent practical effects and was a showcase of the era's techniques. As the ultimate compliment to George Romero, the 2004 remake hit all the key moments and presented a thoroughly engrossing feature. Number 3. From the highly respected Steve McQueen driving classic is the 88 effects fest, The Blob. Only using the skeletal structure of the 58 original, the reboot was a fearless rock and roll ride of a movie. Although featuring impressive effects for 1958, the updated practicals and use of color made the Blob 88 stand out from his predecessor. The movie both impressed and shocked many viewers, with Chuck Russell's unabashed direction, going as far to kill a child character on screen, a feature that was often banned by the ratings board. Designed to be marketed to the 80s MTV generation, the Blob 88 fit perfectly with the era's pop culture and remains one of the most praised effects-based horror movies of the 1980s. Number 2. From the master of body horror, David Cronenberg's The Fly is considered by some as his finest hour. The original story of a man who becomes genetically fused with a housefly and strives to reverse the effects. Starring Jeff Goldblum, the remake would explore a much more visceral take on the story and present the transformation as a slow necrotizing process. Following Seth Brundle as his body mutates, Goldblum's outstanding performance is only overshadowed by the practical makeup effects. Created by Chris Wallace, the gradual transformation of man into insect made for a brutally visceral and unforgettable experience. The movie would also inspire several major franchises, including The Simpsons and even the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Passionate, hideous, and darkly beautiful, Cronenberg's The Fly delivered highly effective drama and is often considered as the peak of 80s practical effects. Number 1. It's often forgotten that John Carpenter's The Thing was originally made as 50s B-movie, The Thing from Another World. Adapted to screen from the John Campbell novel Who Goes There, the story follows a team of Antarctic researchers who discover a frozen alien life form. Upon its reanimation, the creature has the ability to mimic and consume any living thing it comes into contact with. Starring Kurt Russell and an outstanding supporting cast, John Carpenter's reimagining showcased arguably the greatest practical effects of all time. Created by Rob Bottin, the show-stealing creature effects remain some of the most creative and effective horror visuals ever set to screen. Capturing the same bleak isolation as the original, The Thing had a much more amplified sense of suspense and dread, all due to the excellently written characters, story, and masterful direction. Arguably the greatest remake movie in any given genre, The Thing remains one of the most beloved and praised horror movies of all time. So there was my list. Were there any I missed? Which horror remakes do you love the most? Leave a comment below, and please consider supporting the show on Patreon, and have your say in future videos by following Demented Pictures on Facebook. Links in the description below. As always, this is Mike from Demented Pictures. May your movies be bloody and your scares be shitless. Every so often, a movie is released so controversial that rumors spread like wildfire. Adding a ban almost automatically grants the picture a small cult status. Usually, these movies are banned for good reason, lacking any moral, narrative, or are simply aimed to disgust viewers. But once in a while, a visionary filmmaker pushes the boundaries of what is considered tasteful, but doesn't stray from the art of cinema. Throughout the history of filmmaking, there have been some outstanding notorious pictures. This is the Top 10 Banned Movies. For this list, I'll be looking at the very best alternate movies that were refused rating. There's no locale off limits. If it was banned somewhere in the world, it's eligible. This list is not about how many countries have banned a particular picture, but the quality and impact of the feature itself. So let's begin. Number 10. Last House on the Left is often considered as the origin of the rape and revenge subgenre. As the first outing for future horror master Wes Craven, the movie was made with the intention of standing out among its peers. Produced by Sean S. Cunningham, who would go on to create the Friday the 13th franchise, the movie would intentionally push the envelope on what was considered decent and exploit sexual violence to a never-before-seen level in cinema. Originally titled Sex Crime of the Century, upon its release, several countries denied certification of the movie for its depiction of suggested underage rape and unyielding violence. It was also rumored that several projectionists were ordered by patrons to destroy the film. Since its initial release, the ban has been universally lifted and now holds a place in horror history as one of the earliest examples of extreme cinema. Number 9. One of the most notorious movies ever made, and for good reason. Cannibal Holocaust featured live animal slaughter and contained archive footage of real human death. It was the reality of the picture that led people to believe that the cast were indeed dead, and the movie itself was a snuff feature. In actuality, the cast had signed a 1-year silence contract. When director Ruggero Deodato was taken to court, he had to release the cast from the contract to present them in court, alive and well. The case earned the movie mass notoriety, and although acquitted of manslaughter, the animal murder and stock footage caused the movie to be banned in most major countries. Later released in variously edited versions, the movie remains one of the most infamous of all time. Number 8. Not exclusively banned in the US, initial release wasn't granted until 2011. Though never confirmed, it's believed that this was out of respect to the victims of the Columbine massacre. Finding a US audience through bootleg videos and early torrenting sites, the movie gained huge popularity from Quentin Tarantino, who hailed the picture as one of his all-time favorites, and would include actress Chiaki Kuriyama in his 2003 action opera, Kill Bill. The controversy surrounding the picture was not of the hyper-violence, but more of the social and political implications of the narrative. Originally aiming for an R rating in his home continent, Battle Royale was deemed inappropriate for adolescent society. Ironically, the movie would win multiple awards and receive universal praise from Western critics, ultimately making the movie a cult hit and one of the most celebrated pictures in Asian cinema. Number 7. Set in a bleak futuristic Britain, the story follows Alex DeLarge and his team of droogs as they embark on a night of ultraviolence under the influence of a beverage known as Milk Plus. Most notably, the scene of the droog sexually violating the wife of a famed author while Alex jovially sings Singing in the Rain. In March of 1972, the movie was linked to 2 separate murders in the United Kingdom. In both cases, the assailants were accused of copying the scene. The movie was banned by Kubrick himself after his family had received threats from protesters, blaming the movie for being influential to glorifying violence. Following Kubrick's death, the movie was recertified for release in 1999, a whole 27 years after its initial theatrical run, and remains one of the most iconic and notorious movies of the United Kingdom. Number 6. Hailed as one of the scariest movies of all time, The Exorcist shocked the world in 1978. The unyielding depiction of a young possessed girl whose mind and body are consumed by a demon. Although praised by many critics, the public response to the picture was overwhelmed by reports of patrons apparently fading with fear in cinemas. Released in a more gullible time, Much of the controversy came from the religious implications of possession and the genuine fears held by many religious individuals. The graphic visualization of Reagan's transformation led many countries to review its classification on the grounds of its potentially harmful content. The ban would extend to the United Kingdom in 1984 following the Film Classification Act. In 1998, the movie received a full theatrical re-release and finally received uncut syndication in 2001, making it one of the longest banned movies in UK history. Number 5. As one of the original exploitation movies, Todd Browning's Freaks was released to immediate outrage. Acted by persons with genuine deformities, the climax of the movie sees the titular freaks band together to take vengeance on a beautiful trapeze artist who threatened one of their own. The movie was refused certification from several countries, mostly due to the exploitive nature and misrepresentation of deformed performers. Production company MGM also received legal threats from an unnamed woman who suffered a miscarriage and blamed the shocking climax of the picture as the cause. The original cut of the movie received multiple edits. Originally believed to run approximately 80 minutes, the final print runs at a mere 64, and sadly, the original cut of the movie is believed to no longer exist. Opening to almost unanimously scathing reviews, Freaks remains the only movie in MGM history to be pulled from theaters. Ironically, the movie entered the US Film Registry as a historically significant picture. Number 4. Despite receiving mostly positive reviews on its initial release, when Sam Raimi's Evil Dead was shipped internationally, many cultures were not prepared for the relentless intensity of the picture, most notably the United Kingdom. The movie would live in British pop culture infamy as the movie that kick-started the video nasty furore of 1984. Following a legal loophole, many videos were allowed distribution without review or classification. During this time, the British home video market was swamped with potentially censorable movies, the most popular being The Evil Dead. The ban instantly made a success of the movie. VHS copies were considered contraband and became the most sought-after and bootlegged film of 1984. The ban was lifted in 1990, following several heavy cuts, and was re-released in 2001. By this time, the movie had 2 sequels and was already cemented in pop culture. Number 3. The controversy surrounding George Romero's Night of the Living Dead began on his premiere screening. Predating the MPAA by 1 month, the movie was available to be viewed by any age group. Accustomed to low-key Universal-style horror movies, child patrons were unprepared for such mature horror. This new breed of horror movie quickly swept across the world, shocking all countries in its path. Most accepting the sophisticated direction, but many found the gore effects to be pornographically excessive, and the social commentary a taboo subject. Starring Dwayne Jones, a black lead actor caused racially segregated nations to refuse certification. Coupled with the graphic gore and violence, the banning of the picture would lead to mass notoriety and ultimately, a more successful picture. Of its time, Night of the Living Dead was the most profitable horror movie ever made. Number 2. Considered to be the first extreme horror movie, Psycho shocked the world in 1960 with its blend of masterful direction and real-world connections. Orchestrated to screen by the master of suspense Alfred Hitchcock, the movie challenged periodic sensibilities of sexuality and violence. The revelation of a murderous transvestite was considered excessively improper. Coupled with the masterful direction and high profile of the feature, it deemed culturally inappropriate for many countries. Atop of the sexual themes was the horror intensity itself. Cinemagoers were reportedly being removed from theaters on gurneys because of its truly shocking content. Although still banned in some nations, the movie is recognized as groundbreaking and is hailed as a masterpiece of cinema. Number 1. From Tobe Hooper is the legendary Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Initially advertised as a true story, the movie received immediate mass notoriety, not banned for a single scene, but for its accumulative intensity. Described at the time as a punishing assault on the senses, when the movie traveled overseas, it was billed by the BBC's James Furman as the pornography of terror. The relentless intensity and ending the movie without vanquishing the antagonists was considered too extreme for civilized society, and the ban would spread across Europe, eventually making it the most talked about and in-demand movie of 1974. Some picture houses were forced to withdraw the movie by local police or face morality charges against them. Ironically, Hooper had originally intended the movie to have a PG rating. This explains the lack of blood and nudity in the picture. The majority of the bans were lifted in the late 1990s as it was no longer deemed a threat to society. Although still banned in several countries, the original print now resides in the New York Museum of Modern Art. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is heralded as one of the greatest and most controversial movies of all time. Almost single-handedly inventing the slasher genre, it's also recognized as one of the most important movies in the history of horror. So there was my list. Were there any I missed? Which band movies do you love the most? Leave a comment below and consider following me on Facebook to have your say in future top 10s. Also, you can support the channel on Patreon and help the show develop. Use the links in the description box below. And as always, this is Mike for Demented Pictures. May your movies be bloody and your scares be shitless. As a relatively new entry to the horror genre, found footage movies have had a massive impact on the horror community. Made for almost no budget, they're typically made by independent filmmakers and have proved to Hollywood that it's not all about gore and effects. This POV style of filmmaking has become a hugely successful niche, even capturing the attention of Hollywood. Usually filmed in a handheld style to create a potential reality, these small movies are able to create some of the most memorable scares in cinema history. This is the Top 10 Found Footage Movies. For this list, I'll be looking at the very best examples of found footage horror. To qualify, the movie must be filmed in a style that mirrors reality, whether the footage is handheld, security cam, or any other guerrilla-style method. As long as the picture is not shot in the typical cinematic tradition, it's eligible for this list. So let's begin. Number 10. Starting the list is J.J. Abrams' first major production, Cloverfield. This kaiju movie received mass attention during its exceptional ad campaign in 2008. Showing little more than Lady Liberty's head rolling down a New York street and a nondescript title, many took to the internet to find clues surrounding the movie. Upon its release, cinemagoers experienced what may be considered the first big-budget found footage movie. Mostly following the attendees of a farewell party as a giant monster wreaks havoc in New York, we join the party as they try to reach their families and flee from the city. Featuring outstanding effects, the movie won over audiences with its high energy, suspense, and amazing creature design. Also spawning two indirect sequels, Cloverfield has since become a staple name in the world of horror. Number 9. Filmed with a combination of home video and security footage, Paranormal Activity documents the supernatural occurrences surrounding Katie. Moving into a new home, in hopes of capturing the events on camera, her partner Micah sets up multiple cameras in their home. Throughout the course of the picture, Katie's hauntings become progressively more unsettling and violent, building up to one of the most memorable and chilling horror endings of the 21st century. Praised for its atmosphere and suspense, the movie would receive 5 cash grab sequels, none managing to better the effectiveness of the original movie, and is often scathed by seasoned horror fans. Filmed with a budget of only $15,000, the movie's return of almost $200 million makes Paranormal Activity the most profitable feature ever made. Number 8. Set in the catacombs of Paris, archaeologist Scarlett leads a team underground hoping to discover the mythological Philosopher's Stone. After deciphering the grave of Nicholas Flamel, Scarlett gathers a team to document the journey. Becoming lost in the underground, we learn of a supernatural cult that lives in the passages. Driven by the hunt for their Philosopher's Stone and with no option but to go further into the ever-changing catacombs, the group were forced to face their own fears in order to survive. Filmed in the first-person angle, the movie's style of treating the audience as a team member created a chillingly immersive and claustrophobic experience. And despite the mixed reviews by many critics, As Above, So Below was well received by horror fans for its atmosphere and engrossing story. Number 7. Considered by some as the original found footage movie, The Last Broadcast follows the crime TV mockumentary Fact or Fiction as it covers the case of a cable TV host who is accused of killing 3 of his production team. During a live TV broadcast that explores the Pine Barrens, a team go in search of the Jersey Devil. Led by psychic Jim Stewart, the footage shows the team go deeper into the woods, which are also assumed to be the home of a serial killer. Presented with a mix of mockumentary, the movie features faux interviews spliced with the recovered and restored footage caught by the deceased film crew. Sadly, the movie would fade into obscurity as it was overshadowed by the Blair Witch Project. Over time, The Last Broadcast has slowly gained in popularity and is beginning to see the recognition it truly deserves. Number 6. The most recent entry on the list, this documentary-style picture observes Deborah Logan, a sweet old lady who suffers from Alzheimer's disease. She allows a film crew into her home to document the disease as it slowly breaks down her personality. As the picture evolves, we learn there is something more than just her condition causing the downward spiral. Witnessing unexplained events, we learn she may be possessed by a serpentine demon. Featuring a standout performance from Jill Larson, as Deborah deteriorates, her ability to switch between personalities adds an engrossingly contrasted experience rarely seen in cinema. Receiving almost unanimously positive reviews, The Taking of Deborah Logan was referred to by critics as found footage done right, for its outstanding antagonist and unforgettable ending. Number 5. As a cynical take on TV shows like Most Haunted, the movie follows the team of Grave Encounters, a charlatan reality TV show that explores supposedly haunted buildings. Recorded in an abandoned asylum, the pessimistic crew learn that the building they're investigating is home to genuine sinister spirits. Over the course of the movie, the team find themselves trapped in an ever-changing building layout. Forced to go further into the bowels of the asylum, the team are picked off until only one member remains. Despite the typical setup, Grave Encounter's cynical approach to the genre gave the movie a flavor that made it stand out from its peers. Coupled with great atmosphere and suspense, this under-the-radar picture has since grown a faithful following and even spawned a sequel. Although originally receiving mixed reviews, Grave Encounters has remained a genre favorite since 2011. Number 4. A rare horror entry from Norway, the mockumentary follows 3 students who set out to capture a suspected bear poacher. During their investigation, they meet Hans, who claims to be a troll hunter working for the government. Following him into the woods, the team discovered that the night is home to giant monsters. Fascinated with the creatures, the students begin to document the hunter as he tracks down several dangerous trolls that escaped from secret government protection. The movie would gain the attention of Harry Potter director Chris Columbus, who's been pitching a Western remake since 2012. Though not confirmed, it is believed to have inspired his 2017 feature I Kill Giants. Praised for its Nordic sense of humor and featuring humbling low-budget effects, Troll Hunter won multiple awards and was nominated by Empire magazine as the best horror movie of 2011. Number 3. Showcasing the talents of several different filmmakers, these anthology movies deliver a plethora of scares. Most notably, Amateur Night, a date gone wrong movie when an unassuming girl becomes involved in a potential gang rape situation, only to learn she's a shape-shifting demon. Interestingly, this segment would be expanded into the full feature, Siren. And also Safe Haven, a story of a cult leader that allows a cynical film crew to record the raising of a demon. Presented in a rough videotape format, the first 2 VHS films have a well-deserved following. Although dropping the ball with Viral, the 3rd installment, parts 1 and 2 are on the verge of becoming cult movies. Despite the few underwhelming segments, between the first 2 pictures lay some of the very best and effective horror shorts ever created. Number 2. The movie that both started the craze and gave the genre its title, The Blair Witch Project, needs no introduction. The story of 3 student filmmakers who become lost in the Burkittsville woods in hopes of documenting a local legend became a worldwide success in 1999. Filmed on a micro budget of $60,000 and a return of almost $250 million, Blair Witch Mania introduced many parts of the world to low-budget independent movies and paved the way for the future of found footage cinema. The creation of the Blair Witch Project was a perfect storm. In similar fashion to the footage segments of Cannibal Holocaust, the entire movie was presented as factual and used the internet and viral marketing to create false news reports and fake mythologies, all building to the potential reality of the picture. Seen as a very polarizing movie, separating horror fans from cinephiles, The Blair Witch Project remains one of the most important horror films of all time. Have your say in future top 10s and follow Demented Pictures on Facebook. Also, you can support the show on Patreon. Check the links in the description box below. Number 1. From Catalonia comes this almost perfect zombie movie. Following a reality TV film crew as they report on a local fire service, they are called to an apartment building and find an elderly woman covered in blood screaming. After savagely attacking one of the fire crew, the team discovered the building is under quarantine. Throughout the confusion, the attacked fireman springs to life and tries to savage the crew and tenants. What follows is an all-out barrage as the occupants are slowly and viciously turned into red-eyed demons. Upon learning of a clergyman who lives in the building, they head to the top floor to discover that the priest is harboring a dark, horrifying secret. Seen almost solely through the eyes of cameraman Pablo, this immersive POV horror experience surprised fans and critics alike with its high energy and gore effects. Winning multiple awards from 9 governing bodies, Rec also spawned 3 sequels and had a US remake Dilogy, and has become one of the most successful horror franchises of the 21st century. So there was my list. Were there any I missed? Which found footage movies do you love the most? Leave a message below and consider checking out some of these other episodes of Demented Top Tens. This is Mike from Demented Pictures saying, may your movies be bloody and your scares be shitless. In many relationships, there's often conflict when deciding on a movie to watch together. Where one might seek blood, guts, and gore, the other craves drama, love, or comedy. Often having to concede to a significant other's movie choice has sometimes created incompatibility issues and even arguments within a relationship. Although not often released, there have been a number of movies created that bridge the gap between horror fans and non-horror fans that find common ground to deliver equally entertaining movies. This is the Top 10 Date Night Movies. For this list, I'll be looking at the alternate movies that are universally entertaining, which are equal parts horror and any other non-related genre. So grab your loved one, and let's begin. Number 10. One of the most original movies of recent memory, The Cabin in the Woods is the story of 5 cliché teens who spend a weekend at an abandoned cabin. Unbeknownst to them, the cabin plays home to a secret agency's ulterior motive. Adorned with a plethora of monster-summoning devices, the teens unwittingly begin a chain of events that leads to the release of dozens of captive iconic creatures. The beauty of the movie comes from Joss Whedon's exceptional writing. The plot device used to unite so many unique antagonists into a single picture makes for an outstanding Easter egg hunt for any horror fan. Blended with great teen comedy and stylish direction, The Cabin in the Woods is a unique and universally accessible picture. Number 9. This backdoor take on the alien invasion movie follows Casey, a freshman student who discovers that the faculty are not who they appear to be. Finding a bizarre, unassuming animal on the football field, the creature turns out to be a symbiotic life form with the ability to control its host. Upon possessing the titular faculty, Casey bands with a motley crew of students in hopes of preventing the impending alien invasion. The movie is a blend of Invasion of the Body Snatchers and John Hughes' The Breakfast Club. And although cliched, what makes the picture stand out is the exceptional writing and colorful characters. Coupled with stylish direction and some great suspense, The Faculty is sadly an often overlooked teen horror classic. Number 8. This dark Wiccan thriller follows 4 Catholic high school friends. Unhappy with their lives, they turn to dark magic in hopes of bettering themselves. As their skepticism turns into belief, the girls absolve their personal issues. Venturing deeper into the dark arts, they begin to abuse their newfound powers. Serving as a commentary on the abuse of power, Alpha Witch Nancy becomes intoxicated with her new gifts. Driven by a warped sense of injustice, she becomes a vigilant judge, jury, and executioner to all those who offend her. Although lacking the humor of its contemporaries, the craft delivers a strong story and a show-stealing performance from Fairuza Balk, with enough magic and sex appeal to please any light horror fan. Number 7. Starring Jesse Eisenberg and Woody Harrelson, this road movie covers the journey of Columbus and Tallahassee as they travel America following a zombie apocalypse. Meeting 2 sisters along the way, the 4 continue their journey to find safe haven. On the surface, Zombieland verges on being a generic comedy, but looking deeper reveals a heartfelt and charming tale of survival and friendship. Earning universal praise from critics and cinemagoers, the movie became the second most successful zombie movie of the 2000s behind the remake of Dawn of the Dead. With a show-stealing cameo from Bill Murray, Zombieland remains one of the most popular horror comedies of all time. Number 6. Directed by the master of horror Wes Craven, Scream follows a group of high school teens who are preyed upon by a mysterious ghost-faced killer. Mostly following the character Sydney, who unbeknown to her is the focus of the murders, as her circle of friends are being slaughtered one by one. What makes the movie stand out among its peers is the self-aware approach to the story, both mocking and praising classic slasher movie tropes. The movie would kickstart a surge in teen slashers in the 90s, but none managed to capture the values of Scream. Considered by many to be the picture that killed the slasher movie, Scream is still regarded as one of the greatest in the genre. Number 5. The movie that revitalized vampire lore. The original 1985 Fright Night follows Charlie, a horror fanatic who believes his new neighbor to be a vampire. Enlisting the help of Peter Vincent, a skeptic washed-up horror actor, Charlie must convince Peter into believing that vampires are real and pose a genuine threat. Featuring standout practical effects and a standout synth pop track, Charlie strives to make people believe and ultimately save his best friend and girlfriend from his vampire neighbor. The movie was complemented with a respectful update in 2011, starring Colin Farrell. Still overshadowed by the original, Fright Night serves as an outstanding example of 80s teen horror. Number 4. The third installment of the Evil Dead franchise sees Ash Williams transported to the 1300s. Traveling dark lands in search of the Necronomicon, a book with the power to return Ash home, he unwittingly unleashes the titular Army of Darkness. This second sequel fully embraces the slapstick dark comedy established in the previous pictures, and would also introduce Sheila, a new love interest for Ash. Upon retrieving the Necronomicon, Sheila is taken by the Dead-Eyed Army. Driven by desire, Ash trains new soldiers and uses his knowledge of the future to wage war and help save his love. As one of the most quotable movies of the 1990s, Army of Darkness is arguably one of the most universally entertaining horror movies ever made. Number 3. Considered by some to be the ultimate teen horror movie, The Lost Boys follows brothers Sam and Michael. Upon moving to Santa Carla, they discover their new hometown is also home to a family of vampires. As they try to adapt to a new society, Sam and Michael band with opposing circles, Michael with the vampires and Sam with the vampire killers. Although becoming social enemies, their brotherhood keeps them together as they team up to take out the titular Lost Boys. Also featuring the now iconic Frog Brothers, the movie would revitalize the vampire genre. Previously seen as monstrous creatures, makeup artist Greg Canham designed prosthetics that allowed the natural attractiveness of the actors not to be hidden. Funny, sexy, and thoroughly entertaining, The Lost Boys is one of the all-time greats. Number 2. Part parody, all praisal. Shaun of the Dead astounded audiences in 2004 with its perfect blend of romance, zombies, and comedy. The rom-com from the UK delivers high in every aspect. Brilliantly written, brilliantly acted, not too much gore, and not too much romance. Following Shaun and Ed as they travel across London to save Shaun's girlfriend and family to take them to a safe haven of a local pub. At first glance, Shaun of the Dead appeared to be nothing more than a zombie parody movie, but both audiences and critics alike found an outstandingly original comedy that fully praises the horror genre. As the first big screen outing for Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, and also the feature debut for Edgar Wright, Shaun of the Dead became one of the most beloved horror comedies of all time. Have your say in future top 10s and follow Demented Pictures on Facebook. You can also support the show through Patreon, links in the description below. Number 1. Arguably the greatest horror comedy of the 2010s, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil has already fallen into cult status. The story of two hillbilly rednecks with a dream of fixing an old cabin for summer retreats, located near a lake where a group of teens happens to be camping. Unaccustomed to redneck simplicities, they suspect the hillbillies to be psychopaths. As the movie progresses, the confusion becomes more and more absurd as the teens' fear drives them into total stupidity. Upon meeting Allison, who sees Tucker and Dale for their humble ways, serves as an excellent commentary of not judging a book by its cover. Featuring standout performances from Alan Tudyk and Tyler Labine, fans have been eagerly awaiting a sequel since 2010. Balancing gore, comedy, and romance excellently, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil stands high as an outstanding dark romantic comedy and is the perfect date night movie for any couple. So that was my list. Were there any I missed? Which movies do you love to watch with your significant other? Leave a message below and be sure to check out some of the other top 10s on screen now. And as always, this is Mike from Demented Pictures saying, may your movies be bloody and your scares be shitless. In the world of horror, many cultures own individual cinemas that are often overlooked by English-speaking audiences. These nations home some of the greatest and most beloved alternate movies of all time. Not following Western filmmaking traditions, Asia has been one of the most notable. Creating some of the most original and unique movies of all time, no country has been more prominent than Japan. This is the Top 10 J-Horror Movies. For this list, I'll be looking at the very best alternate movies to hail from the land of the rising sun. I'll be overlooking movies from the rest of Asia, as that's a list for another time. So let's begin. Number 10. Adapted from the manga of the same name, Ichi the Killer follows the story of Kakihara, a sadistic Yakuza henchman who recently lost the only man who could satisfy his masochistic desires. Learning of a mysterious savage that slaughters and butchers his victims, Kakihara sets out on a mission to discover the only man he believes will ever be able to give him satisfaction. This undiluted translation from paper to screen was met with high praise from fans for adhering to the extreme graphic violence depicted in the manga. Directed by the legendary Takashi Miike, Ichi the Killer became one of the most infamous movies of the 2000s for its exploitations of sex and violence, however remains one of the most intelligible examples of extreme cinema. Number 9. Having grown recent online popularity for its psychedelic and bizarre cinematography, House has become anonymous with eccentric Japanese cinema. On the surface, the movie begins a typical haunted house story, as 7 girls visit an aunt's country home, only to find the building is trying to devour them. Inspired by director Nobuhiko Obayashi's daughter's own fears, the movie fully realizes a child's irrational nightmares. Originally released as a double feature with Pure Hearts in Mud, this highly contrasted and oddly beautiful picture would become a huge commercial success and a word-of-mouth underground hit in America. Without question, an overlooked, obscure classic. Number 8. This second entry from Takashi Miike tells the story of Shigeharu, a recent widower who is advised by his son to move on with life and find himself a new wife. Past his prime, and with the help of a casting director, he holds a fake audition in hopes of meeting a potential partner. Upon meeting Asami, a beautiful nubile girl, Shigeharu becomes enamored, unaware she is a demented psychopath. Miike's outstanding direction builds almost unbearable tension as we discover how twisted Asami truly is, all building to an unforgettable and excruciating climax. Released to unanimous positive reviews, Audition instantly gained infamy as one of the most disturbing and masterful mainstream pictures ever made. Number 7. Released in '97 and directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa, this critically acclaimed dark psychological thriller features a killer with an inability to create new memories. Unable to recall his crimes, Detective Takabe begins an investigation to discover the killer's true intentions. Leaving his victims with a black cross carved into their neck, Takabe learns that the killer was a master of hypnotism and sets out to prove his short-term memory loss is simply another deception. Never truly discovering the intentions or identity of the killer, this slow-burn picture is built on atmosphere and exceptional characters. Although criticized for its ambiguous ending, the beauty of Cure is due to its cryptic nature. Littered with subtle clues as to the outcome, demands repeat viewings that ultimately makes the movie a different experience on every viewing. Number 6. Following the atomic bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima in 1945, the threat of nuclear holocaust became the paramount fear in Japan. Representing nature's response, Godzilla was created, the original and most iconic giant monster that paved the future for its own cinematic subgenre, kaiju. Originally considered an exploitation of the horror of the atomic bomb, the original release was mostly shunned by Japanese audiences. Not until the American release was the political satire truly revealed. As the fear of nuclear war became less prominent, the movie would be seen for its exceptional metaphor, and although tarnished by its many tongue-in-cheek sequels, it's often forgotten that the original Gojira is one of the most important movies in the history of Japanese cinema. Number 5. As the most recent movie on this list is a testament to this outstanding picture. Released in 2010, Confessions follows Yuko, a teacher and mother to a murdered child. Knowing her daughter's killers to be 2 of her own students, too young to stand trial, she seeks her own vengeance against them. This ultra-dark thriller astounded critics and audiences alike with its unabashed execution of such a taboo subject. Featuring an outstanding performance from Takako Matsu, the movie would win multiple awards at the Hong Kong Film Festival and even be nominated for an Academy Award in 2011. Respectful, unsettling, and of outstanding quality, Confessions is one of the greatest examples of dark cinema. Number 4. Funded from the profits of Ringu, Battle Royale has been a favorite of extreme cinema fans since its release in 2000. Following a new government policy that forces schoolchildren into a murderous game of last man standing, to the effect of causing national fear and enforced civility. Armed with only random weapons, the movie documents Class 3B as they must survive 3 days on a remote island until one student remains alive. Praised for its political and social satire, the movie took several years for an official American release following the Columbine Massacre. In the time preceding, Battle Royale had become a major underground cult picture and the most successful R-rated movie in Japanese cinema. Number 3. After being brutally raped and murdered, a mother and daughter-in-law return as vengeful feline spirits to wreak revenge on all samurai. Using sexual advances to lure multiple victims, a hero is charged with the mission to destroy the spirits, the hero being the son and husband of the mother and daughter-in-law respectively. Unable to kill her husband, the wife is condemned to hell, leaving the mother with an unbearable choice: also be damned to hell or murder her own son. Directed by Kaneto Shindo, this darkly graceful picture would win multiple awards and was considered for the 1968 Cannes Film Festival, which was sadly cancelled due to the French Revolution. Also featuring a beautiful but harrowing ending, Kuroneko is one of the all-time greats. Number 2. Although sharing many similarities with Kuroneko, and again directed by Kaneto Shindo, Onibaba is considered to be of the same universe but delivers a truly individual picture. Set during the Japanese Civil War, the movie explores the struggle of poverty and jealousy of a bereft wife and mother-in-law. Learning their son and husband has died, the daughter-in-law becomes sexually entangled with a samurai neighbor. Fearing of a future alone, the mother guises as a folklore demon to try use fear to control her from her partner, only to become a demon herself. Featuring outstanding direction and beautiful cinematography, Onibaba serves as a dark warning of jealousy and bitterness that still has the ability to appear as a modern picture, dark, beautiful, and timeless. If you enjoyed Demented Top Tens, show your appreciation by hitting the thumbs up button and be sure to subscribe to keep up with the channel. Also, have your say in future Top Tens and follow Demented Pictures on Facebook, and consider supporting the show on Patreon, links in the description box below. Number 1. Directed by Masaki Kobayashi, Kwaidan follows 4 tales originating from Japanese folklore. The Black Hare follows a former samurai who marries into wealth, only to learn that love and money are unequally valuable before succumbing to a twisted revelation. The Woman of the Snow. After witnessing the murder of his mentor by the ghost Yukiona, he is sworn to secrecy of what he saw. Many years later, the man remarries and breaks his vow of silence to discover his wife also holds a dark secret. Hoichi the Earless. A blind musician famed for his arias about the Genpei War. Visually unaware of his audience, it becomes suspect that the people he hears may not actually be alive. And finally, In a Cup of Tea, a story within a story that tells of a samurai who is haunted by the face of a mysterious man he sees in his tea. Driven by desire to find the meaning of the enigma, he is ultimately driven to madness. Literally translating to ghost stories, the movie would win multiple awards, including the Oscar for the Best Foreign Language Film at the 1966 Academy Awards. Pioneering effects and cinematography that are still used in cinema today, Kwaidan is recognized as one of the most beautiful and important movies in the history of Japanese cinema. So there was my list. Were there any I missed? Which J-horror movies do you love the most? Leave a comment below, and consider checking out other episodes of Demented Top Tens on screen now. And as always, this is Mike from Demented Pictures saying, May your movies be bloody and your scares be shitless. It's commonly believed the first media Easter egg was found in 1979's Atari 2600 game, Adventure. Programmed by Warren Robinett, he hid his name within the game for the players to discover. This, however, is not true. An earlier example of Easter eggs were to be found in the 1975 cult classic, The Rocky Horror Picture Show. Hiding actual Easter eggs within the set for the cast, crew, and audience to discover, director Jim Sharman is potentially the actual progenitor. Future directors would begin to add references to other pictures within their own movies, and over time, created the trend that it is today. This is the Top 10 Horror Easter Eggs. For this list, I'll be looking at the very best Easter eggs to reference horror movies. However, the hosting picture does not have to be horror itself. So let's begin. Number 10. Starting this list is the 2006 James Gunn horror comedy, Slither. In the establishing shots of the town, we get to see several of the local businesses. Paying close attention to the funeral home, you can see that it's owned by R.J. McCready. This being the name of the main protagonist from John Carpenter's 82 classic, The Thing. Interestingly, James Gunn would later work with Kurt Russell 11 years later in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. As a bonus Easter egg, the school featured in the movie was Earl Bassett High. This is a reference to Fred Ward's character in the 1990 creature feature, Tremors. Number 9. Regarded as one of the greatest horror movies of the 1990s, Wes Craven's self-aware slasher Scream was already packed with horror references. The greatest of which follows the scene where Principal Himbry suspends two students for imitating the ghost-faced killer. Becoming spooked, he checks the halls. Here, he sees Fred the janitor, an old man in a fedora wearing an all-too-familiar green and red sweater. Played by Wes Craven in a cameo role, Fred is a reference to his most celebrated antagonist, Freddy Krueger, who interestingly, in early drafts of A Nightmare on Elm Street, was conceived as a janitor. Number 8. Although not the most discreet Easter egg, in the opening shots of Bride of Chucky, Tiffany breaks into an evidence locker to retrieve the body of Chucky. For a brief moment, several iconic horror artifacts can be seen. These include Freddy Krueger's glove from A Nightmare on Elm Street, Jason Voorhees' mask from the Friday the 13th franchise, a pull-on 245 chainsaw as wielded by Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the mask worn by Michael Myers from the Halloween franchise. The movie suggested that the references were there to imply they were all of the shared universe, and hinted at a potential crossover. However, this was not to be, but remains a fan-favorite Easter egg. Number 7. One of the best-known horror Easter eggs that would ignite its own franchise. During the climax of 1990's Predator 2, Detective Harrigan finds himself aboard an alien ship. Upon discovering a collection of trophy skulls, there's one in particular that would be instantly recognizable. The unmistakable form of a xenomorph skull, the antagonist from Ridley Scott's Alien, can clearly be seen. This would be the first acknowledgement that the two franchises existed within the same universe, which would ultimately lead to several crossover comic books, video games, before finally going head-to-head in 2006, Alien vs. Predator. Number 6. Jason Goes to Hell features a double whammy of high-profile Easter eggs. Located in the Voorhees house, Detective Freeman discovers the Necronomicon, which led to many fan theories that suggest that Jason Voorhees is in fact a Deadite. The book used was Tom Sullivan's actual prop from Evil Dead 2, which was loaned without permission by Sam Raimi. The second Easter egg is found in the closing shot of the movie. As Jason's mask is seen in the sand, it's dragged below by Freddy Krueger's iconic glove. The cameo was to tease a script that had floated around Hollywood since 1987 and wouldn't be realized until 2003 in Freddy vs. Jason. Number 5. Hidden within this Pixar classic lies some of the most unlikely horror references in a family picture. This easy-to-miss Easter egg is found in Sid's house. When trying to escape, Buzz enters the hallway and walks on an all too familiar carpet, which, confirmed by the filmmakers, is a palette swap pattern that was prominently used in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. This pattern would also be seen in Toy Story 3, which is speculated to resemble the launch pad at the Kennedy Space Center. Further references include the garbage truck license plate that reads RM237. In The Shining, Room 237 of the Overlook Hotel is the focus of many of the movie's most memorable scares. Number 4. The whole production is a homage to classic horror movies. Written by Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, the picture is filled with references to their inspirations. To name a few, Ed shouting the line, "We're coming to get you, Barbara," is taken almost verbatim from the original Night of the Living Dead. Fulci's Pizza is a reference to Lucio Fulci, director of the giallo favorite Zombie, and also Bub's Pizza, which refers to the somewhat domesticated zombie Bub from Day of the Dead. Shown using a trampoline to clear a garden fence is a reference to the '93 Konami video game Zombies Ate My Neighbors, a gag that would be repeated in both Hot Fuzz and The World's End. Following a private screening for George Romero, he was so humbled by the picture that Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg would appear in the upcoming movie Land of the Dead. Number 3. There's always been a mutual respect between Wes Craven and Sam Raimi. Beginning in 1980's iconic Evil Dead, Raimi features a torn poster of Craven's shocker The Hills Have Eyes to show that his movie was the more scarier. In response, Craven's next feature, A Nightmare on Elm Street, would show the lead character Nancy falling asleep while watching The Evil Dead. Raimi's response came in Evil Dead 2, where he would hide Freddy's glove in the cabin's work shed. Interestingly, the glove would again make an appearance in the TV series Ash vs. Evil Dead. The final blow came from Craven in the third act of Scream. Randy is holding a VHS of The Evil Dead, which is thrown aside in favor of Halloween. Number 2. As many horror fans know, acclaimed director Peter Jackson began his career in low-budget horror, and often attributed many of his inspirations. Considered by some to be the goriest movie ever made, Dead Alive begins on Skull Island, a direct reference to the Universal classic King Kong, and follows Lionel after his mother is bitten by a Sumatran rat monkey. What follows is an all-out practical gore fest that is still praised to this day. Following the success of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Jackson would be able to remake his most inspirational movie, King Kong. Released in 2005, hidden within the cargo of Carl Denham's ship lies this subtle yet humbling Easter egg that suggests that King Kong and Dead Alive are actually of the same universe. If you enjoyed Demented Top Tens, show your appreciation by hitting the thumbs up button, and be sure to subscribe to keep up with the channel. Also, have your say in future Top Tens and follow Demented Pictures on Facebook, or consider supporting the show on Patreon, links in the description box below. Number 1. In 2012, acclaimed director Joss Whedon created the movie The Cabin in the Woods. The surprisingly complex story was built on the acknowledgement of iconic nightmare creatures from folklore, cinema, and some original. Finding a secret elevator, Dana and Marty take a trip underground to where this outstanding Easter egg is found. The containment room features a host of monster cameos. Most notably are the werewolf, the poltergeist, and a Cenobite, in reference to Clive Barker's Hellraiser. The following pullback shot fully reveals the extent of the containment cells, each homing its own Easter egg. This scene was also complemented by a pool board featuring the names of many more iconic monsters. The Cabin in the Woods is the ultimate fan service movie that manages to tell an original and engaging story and is home to the greatest horror Easter eggs of all time. So there was my list. Were there any I missed? Which horror Easter eggs do you love the most? Leave a comment below, and be sure to check out some other Demented Top Tens on screen now. And as always, this is Mike from Demented Pictures saying, may your movies be bloody and your scares be shitless. In music, it's often been a trend for high-profile artists to cross mediums and appear in movies. Typically tailor-made to promote an artist's image, some pictures have been nothing more than eccentric vanity projects. With the exception of an original score, there is no other genre more synonymous with horror than alternate music. Over time, these two mediums have crossed paths on many occasions and delivered some of the most memorable moments in alternate cinema. This is the Top 10 Rock Stars in Horror. Although there are rock stars who have already made a name for themselves as actors, whether it be a cameo or a starring role, I'll only be including one entry per star, so let's begin. Number 10. The second installment of John Carpenter's vampire series, Los Muertos follows a team of bounty hunters as they track down a vampire princess. Starring in the lead role as Derek Bliss is 80s rock icon Jon Bon Jovi. Rising to fame in the 1980s for his powerhouse vocals and exceptional songwriting, Bon Jovi's departure into acting intrigued many fans. Upon its release, this color-by-number sequel was received with mostly negative reviews. Criticized mostly for its lackluster plot, Bon Jovi's performance would also come under fire. Though not deserving of a headline billing, the pulling power of Bon Jovi's name alone turned Los Muertos into a minor hit of 2002. Number 9. From the web series turned movie is the 2014 hidden gem feature Fear Clinic. Starring Robert Englund as Dr. Andover, a psychiatrist with the ability to cure fear, who is aided by Bauer. In a role originally written for Metallica bassist Rob Trujillo, the part was offered to Stone Sour and Slipknot frontman Corey Taylor. After losing out on appearing in Eli Roth's Clown due to music commitments, Taylor was eager to break into acting. As a well-renowned horror enthusiast and wannabe actor, Taylor's appearance in the movie came as a surprise to many, not for being awful, but for being competent. Stating in interviews that the character of Bauer was originally intended to die, following Taylor's performance, it was rewritten to allow a return in a potential sequel. Number 8. Possibly the most prolific singer-turned-actor, Henry Rollins had already carved out a successful career in cinema. Making his name in the grunge rock group Rollins Band, he had already appeared in multiple alternate movies, but his role in the 2005 creature feature Feast is the one that stands tall. The under-the-radar Last Stand-style movie sees a group of survivors fighting off a horde of ravenous monsters. Among their number is Coach, a have-a-go hero with zero experience. Bringing a clumsy humor to the picture, Rollins' character will become a fan favorite, ultimately succumbing to a laugh-out-loud demise. Rollins being used as a human battering ram is a subtle but arguably the most hilarious death of the picture. Number 7. David Bowie was without question one of the most versatile and visionary artists of his generation. Branching into cinema, one of his first ventures would be the dark romantic drama The Hunger. Starring as John Blaylock, a vampiric classical musician in a 200-year-long relationship with fellow vampire Miriam. Learning that he has eternal life but not eternal youth, he finds himself aging at an accelerated rate. Struggling to find a way to reverse the process, the movie becomes a race against time before withering away into a decrepit corpse. Released in 1983, Bowie impressed many critics by delivering a surprisingly professional performance, and although forgotten by many, The Hunger remains a well-respected movie. Number 6. As a regular cameo performer in horror, no other appearance has been more complimentary than his brief appearance as President Lemmy. Frontman of the iconic British metal band Motorhead, Lemmy Kilmister was always an enthusiast of alternate cinema. Appearing in 30 separate pictures, he also featured in many Troma classics. His role in Return to Nukem High would sadly be one of his final. This short but sweet cameo comes at the very beginning of the movie. Cast as President Lemmy, his literal phoned-in appearance would kickstart the insanity that is synonymous with trauma. Sadly passing away in 2015, Kilmister's contributions to both music and cinema left behind one of the greatest alternate legacies in pop culture. Number 5. From the cult classic The Rocky Horror Picture Show is the first mainstream appearance of who would become one of the biggest rock stars on the planet. Using the production as a stepping stone for his own musical career, Meatloaf's breakout role as Eddie, a failed experiment of Frankenfurter, would propel him into the spotlight. Exploding into the movie, his performance of Hot Patootie Bless My Soul momentarily steals the movie from the outstanding Tim Curry. Causing total chaos in the lab, Eddie's brief appearance would become one of the most memorable. Ultimately being hacked to pieces by Frank, this one performance would catch the attention of Epic Records and fully establish the larger-than-life rock star. Number 4. From one of the most beloved psychological horror movies of the 80s is Blondie frontwoman Debbie Harry as Nikki Brand, a psychiatrist who becomes the face of Max Reed's descent into madness. Setting to discover the origin of Videodrome, she unwittingly becomes the victim of the mysterious network. This bizarre yet captivating appearance puts Harry at the front line of the movie's insanity. Adding an air of sex and glamour to the picture, Harry's role was met with high praise. She would also have a second notable appearance in horror in Tales from the Dark Side the movie as an idealistic cannibal housewife, but will always be remembered in horror as the face of Videodrome. Number 3. As the self-proclaimed villain of rock, it was only a matter of time before Alice Cooper hit the silver screen. Released in 1991, Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare would explore the genesis of the Springwood slasher. Seeing Krueger as a young man, we learned he was the victim of domestic abuse. It's here we discover that his father is Alice Cooper. In this short but important scene, it's Cooper that becomes the first victim of Krueger. The real name Vincent Fernier agreed to the uncredited role under the condition that he be not be cast as the Alice Cooper character. Out of all of his appearances in horror, Cooper has stated that being Freddy Krueger's father and instrumental in the genesis of the iconic villain is by far his favorite role. Number 2. Bram Stoker's Dracula was a mixed bag for many moviegoers. Featuring outstanding performances from Anthony Hopkins and Gary Oldman, of the supporting cast, it was singer Tom Watts that shone above his peers. Cast as the iconic Renfield, no one was expecting Watts' performance to be so ideal. Having only minor experience in acting, he would overshadow his co-stars Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder. Featuring his trademark gravelly vocals, Watts' artistic connection to insanity would become forefront of his performance, bringing an unsettling and demented chaotic which was highly complementary to Renfield. Never straying too far from the screen, Watts has since become a well-respected bit-part actor. If you enjoy Demented Top Tens, show your appreciation by hitting the thumbs up button, and be sure to subscribe to keep up with the channel. Also, have your say in future Top Tens and follow Demented Pictures on Facebook, and consider supporting the show on Patreon, links in the description box below. Number 1. For any bit-part actor, the dream job is that of an on-screen death. In Saw 3D, the late rock star Chester Bennington got to do just that, and delivered with wonderfully gory and elaborate execution. As lead vocalist for iconic metal band Linkin Park, Bennington only had minor experience in acting following a cameo in Jason Statham's Crank trilogy. Having been glued to a car seat, he has to tear the flesh from his body to prevent the death of his friends and himself. Failing the game, he is skinned alive. Also showcasing impressive practical effects, the movie was shunned for being nothing more than a thinly scripted cash grab. But delivering his iconic powerhouse scream, Chester's scene was arguably the highlight of the movie. Bennington will always be remembered as one of the greatest nu metal vocalists of all time, whose contribution to horror and cinema will always be remembered. So there was my list. Were there any I missed? Which rock stars in horror do you love the most? Leave a comment below and consider checking out some of the other Demented Top Tens on screen now. And as always, this is Mike from Demented Pictures saying, may your movies be bloody and your scares be shitless.